Sweet trouble. The little tease seduces the boss again. Synopsis. At 18, Evelyn Sinclair's smile was bright and flamboyant. Alexander Kingsley was deeply captivated at first sight. After marriage, Evelyn suppressed her feelings for Alexander deep in her heart, never revealing. Alexander died. Overwhelmed with pain, and upon learning the whole truth, Evelyn, filled with extreme regret, perished together with her enemies. Just as Evelyn realized she had been reborn, Alexander handed her divorce papers. Seeking to end their marriage, she started a persistent pursuit of her husband. In this lifetime, she vowed to become a clingy plaster that couldn't be shaken off. Later, Alexander pinned her against the wall in a possessive stance. "I'll give you one last chance to choose. Do you want to leave?" Evelyn chuckled coyly. "I want to love you." "Are you sure if you decide to leave after this, I will make you obedient by special means?" Evelyn blinked innocently. "Am I not good now?" From then on, she became Alexander's private possession. One night, Alexander whispered in her ear with a deep, magnetic voice, "Thinking of running, it's too late." In the previous life, he was a loser in love, losing completely. In this life, history repeated itself. But he gambled right. His girl didn't let him lose. Alexander Kingsley. Chapter 1. Mutual destruction from beginning to end. I loved only him. Through 2 lifetimes of deep affection, he staked everything. How could I bear to let him lose? Evelyn Sinclair. The midnight rain fell steadily over Kyoto. The half-mountain villa stood ravaged by fire, its original form unrecognizable. Evelyn Sinclair clung to Alexander Kingsley, weeping softly. Her palms were slick with his warm crimson blood. Her heart tore as if clawed by 1,000 demons. Such fierce tears. Alexander Kingsley's eyes remained clear despite his ghostly pallor. His voice was faint as whispered silk. "Don't cry. In the next life, I won't chain you to my side." He'd set her free. With tremendous effort, Alexander raised his hand with final tenderness. He brushed the tears from Evelyn's cheek. He gazed deeply into her eyes one last time. Then the hand that had wiped her tears fell limp. Alexander was dead. Slain by her own hand, staring blankly, Evelyn's soft weeping spiraled into racking sobs. Pressing her forehead against his cold skin, she murmured brokenly, "Alexander Kingsley." Behind her, a man watched, triumph flashing in his eyes, lips curving upward, suffocating from agony. Tears smearing her delicate face into disheveled ruin, Evelyn turned pleading eyes to the figure behind her. "Brother, I won't seek revenge anymore. Please send him to the hospital. I beg you. I love him." Her shoulders shook violently, breaths ragged between sobs. 1 month earlier, a fire had consumed the Sinclair manor. She'd lost 3 family members. Edward Sterling, Eleanor Whitaker, and Sophia Ashford perished in those flames. Every shred of evidence had pointed toward Alexander Kingsley. Damien Blackwood's expression darkened as he approached. Pausing briefly, he placed a consoling hand on Evelyn's shuddering shoulder. "It's too late." Closing his eyes, he reopened them, heavy with disapproval. "Don't forget, Evelyn. He murdered Mom, Dad, and our sister." Tears flowed unceasingly. Damien, the Sinclair family's adopted son, was the sole survivor of that inferno after his recovery. It was Damien who'd named Alexander as the killer. Evelyn had seen the security footage herself. Alexander, leaving the manor grounds 10 minutes before the fire swept through. Averting her gaze from Damien's reproach, she stared at Alexander's pallid face, tracing his features with trembling fingers. His jawline was flawlessly sharp, skin marble pale, nose elegantly arched. As her tears splashed onto his cheeks, they bloomed like liquid crystal flowers. Thunder rumbled through roiling storm clouds, swallowing the villa's symphony of grief. Evelyn wept until consciousness failed her, collapsing into Damien's arms as he carried her away. She awoke 3 days later, jerked from torturous dreams. Her eyes were hollow caverns, a walking ghost where a vibrant soul once resided. She should feel victorious. Her parents' killer was dead, so why couldn't she reconcile Alexander's absence? After mechanically washing away the remnants of mourning, she descended to find breakfast prepared by Damien in the parlor. A detached glance. Then she strode past, intent on turning herself in. At the entrance stood Harrison Reed, Alexander's executive assistant, the person he trusted most in life. Evelyn halted, pinned by the undisguised revulsion in Harrison's gaze. The silence stretched taut between them after 2 suspended steps. Evelyn spoke. "What do you want?" Harrison thrust documents into her hands. His condemnation pierced like shards of ice. "Don't bother surrendering to the police." "Excuse me." Retrieving his phone, Harrison flashed a pre-scheduled social media update, blowing on its screen. "To protect you, Mr. Kingsley confessed and committed suicide by guilt last night." This post, auto-published at 2 a.m. What? She hadn't checked her devices. She hadn't known. Harrison, ever professional, now vibrated with furious disbelief. If you'd waited just days, mere days, she'd still live. He protected your every breath, yet you schemed for his death. Where is your heart? That man adored you. He'd have shielded all you loved. How could he murder your family? Security footage showing him departing ahead of flames and Damien Blackwood's poisoned whispers. That's all it took for his execution warrant. Each accusation stabbed deeper. Did you truly believe your scheme with Damien could kill him? What delusion! You slaughtered him by weaponizing his love for you. Harrison gestured grimly at the documents. The drive inside holds real evidence, believe it or not. After the tragedy, Alexander had ordered Harrison to investigate. The arsonist's caution yielded scarce trails until yesterday, when the final proof coalesced. Harrison's contempt crystallized. Perhaps your parents' killer never mattered. Maybe divorcing Alexander to shackle yourself to your brother was your true aim. Back in her room, Harrison's words echoed. The documents contained divorce papers and asset transfers, everything Alexander owned. Deeded to her tears splatterdying. Locating the drive, she plugged it into her computer. The revelations detonated like shockwaves. Disbelief paralyzed her. Impossible. Alexander wasn't the killer. Damien was. Damien lit that fire. The drive's evidence dwarfed the scraps that had condemned Alexander, proof of deliberate suffocation. Before ignition, chemical distributors, burner phone communications, all masterminded by Damien. Evelyn burned the divorce papers to ash. She marched to Sterling Enterprises, now Damien's sole dominion. Having frequented the building, monthly receptionists waved her through unchallenged. Outside Damien's office, overlapping voices froze her breath. "Congratulations, Mr. Blackwood. A whisper of manipulation and the Sinclair legacy is yours. With Alexander Kingsley buried, Kyoto's future wears your signature. A toast to triumph." Damien's smile was arctic. Years of orchestration, merely awaiting opportunity. As for Alexander Kingsley, a sneer twisted his lips. Mighty lion, pity about his fragile heart. What of the Sinclair heiress? Damien's dismissal was chilling. If obedient, a plaything defiant, reunite her with her family below. Evelyn's lungs seized, every nerve ignited with remorse. Minutes passed before unsteady steps carried her away. She returned at 3 p.m., having visited Harrison. Revised contracts had transferred Alexander's inheritance to his parents. Feigning composure, she knocked. Enter. Hatred glinted behind Evelyn's icy composure as she faced the man behind the desk. At Damien's upward glance, she forced a smile. "Busy, brother. Never for you." Damien eyed her. "Feeling steadier?" She nodded. Couldn't feel steady while her parents' butcher breathed. "Come to the rooftop. Some air." Damien paused. "Lead on." Atop Sterling Tower's 36 floors, wind whipped around concrete barriers barely hip height. Peering down, Evelyn noted empty streets, workers tethered to desks, recalling 2 decades of Damien's false tenderness. A laugh scraped her throat. "It was you, the fire, drugging my family, framing Alexander, making me murder him, all calculated." Damien startled, then laughed confirmation without denial. To him, this broken girl posed zero threat. "Clever too late. Those who adored you are ash, including the one you slaughtered personally." Evelyn didn't argue. Her laugh was cemetery wind. Unworthy of Alexander's love, she'd been a puppet for her most trusted. 20 years of sibling devotion, pure theater. Not entirely. Arriving age 6, he'd cared genuinely. And when did it begin? Adulthood. Evelyn stepped forward, encircled his waist in an embrace. "Brother, last time I'll call you that." Damien froze. Mid's mugness didn't resist until Evelyn's arms steeled around him. Before comprehension struck, she wrenched them both toward the parapet. Shock widened Damien's eyes too late for defense. He dismissed her as harmless. They plunged, falling through cobalt sky. Alexander's face materialized before Evelyn, her lips curved in a final fractured smile. "Alexander Kingsley, I come to atone." Darkness swallowed Evelyn Sinclair. Whole, two bodies Valines Turling Tower's base. End of chapter 2. Divorce agreement. Evelyn Sinclair painfully curled up in the pitch-black darkness, her soul feeling as though it were being torn apart by evil spirits. Her brows were tightly furrowed, her face deathly pale, etched with unbearable agony. She murmured deliriously, "Alexander Kingsley, it hurts so much." "Where are you?" "Madam, wake up." "Madam." Seeing her unconscious, the voice grew louder. "Madam, you're having a nightmare. Wake up." Margaret Thorne called out to her. The figure curled on the bed was ghostly pale, tears soaking the stray hairs at her temples, trapped in darkness. Evelyn heard the familiar voice and grasped at it like a lifeline. Her eyes snapped open as she sat upright on the bed, dazed and disoriented. Evelyn stared blankly at Margaret Thorne, whispering, "Margaret." Her forehead creased in distress. "Margaret, have you died too?" Margaret Thorne. Margaret gave her a helpless look and gently patted her trembling shoulder. "What nonsense are you saying, madam? Look around. Where do you think this is?" She assumed Evelyn was still disoriented from a nightmare. Evelyn scanned her surroundings, disbelief flooding her features. It was the Kingsley residence, her own bedroom. Could the underworld have an identical mansion? Impossible. Dismissing that thought, she must still be dreaming. She pinched her thigh hard, gasping at the sharp pain. Not a dream. A sudden realization dawned. Throwing off the covers, she grabbed her phone from the nightstand. The date showed early September, 1 month after her wedding to Alexander Kingsley. Frantically grasping Margaret's arm, Evelyn asked, "How long have Alexander Kingsley and I been married?" Margaret was baffled. After a pause, she answered truthfully, 1 month. Releasing Margaret, Evelyn staggered backward. Correct, she had married Alexander Kingsley in August when she was 22. She had been reborn, though familiar with such plots from novels and dramas. She never imagined it happening to her so unbelievable. Seeing her stunned expression, Margaret wondered had she lost her mind. From sleep, Margaret was thoroughly perplexed, until recalling her purpose. "Madam, the master is waiting downstairs." The master, Alexander Kingsley, before Margaret could blink. Evelyn had already fled the empty bedroom. In her desperation to see him, Evelyn raced barefoot down the stairs, forgetting her slippers. The mist blue silk pajamas clung to her frame, her disheveled, shoulder-length, hair-framed, tear-streaked cheeks on porcelain skin. Downstairs, her gaze locked onto him. He sat on the sofa, long legs casually crossed in a tailored black suit, radiating restrained elegance. Alexander Kingsley possessed striking features, deep-set eyes beneath prominent brows, an aristocratic profile exuding courteous detachment. Noticing her intense stare, he turned. Their eyes met. Evelyn froze. His gaze was icily distant, devoid of familiarity, as though studying a stranger. Her heart trembled, but all that mattered was seeing him alive. Alexander's glance flickered to her bare feet before coolly looking away. Rising, his imposing height dwarfed Evelyn's frame at his shoulder. Evelyn stared fixedly at his left chest, where her knife had pierced him. The blow meant to kill, her eyes now filled with bitter remorse. Alexander's lips parted to speak, but her sudden movement stopped him. Fingers trembling, Evelyn reached for his shirt buttons, but froze as Alexander seized her wrists. He stepped back, breaking contact. When she looked up, tears welled in her eyes. Alexander's expression remained unreadable, calm as deep water. Her lashes fluttered. This wasn't the man who once gazed at her tenderly. He'd never retreat when she sought closeness. She stepped forward, wrapping her arms fiercely around his lean waist, clinging like reclaimed treasure. Pressing her tear-stained cheek to his chest, she listened to his steady heartbeat, the only proof this wasn't another cruel dream. Alexander stiffened, acutely aware of the trembling girl in his arms. His hand hovered midair before dropping back to his side, an inscrutable shadow crossing his face. After 10 seconds, he ruthlessly peeled her arms away, distancing himself as if avoiding contagion. The rejection stung, but Evelyn hardly cared. He could have her life right now if he wanted it. Alexander retrieved a folder from the coffee table, his voice icy. "Sign this." "What?" Evelyn couldn't tear her eyes from him, terrified he'd vanish. Accepting the folder, she opened it. Divorce agreement. Shock froze her breath. Memories flooded back. Their marriage began as a cold transaction. When Evelyn's family firm faced bankruptcy from embezzled funds and leaked secrets, Alexander offered salvation through a business alliance, or more accurately manipulated her, though her parents insisted she needn't sacrifice herself. Evelyn couldn't bear her father's legacy collapsing at 22. She married 26-year-old Alexander Kingsley. How easy to fall for such an exceptional man. Through daily proximity without love. They could coexist respectfully. Marriage was marriage. They maintained separate bedrooms. Alexander honored her boundaries. 1 week later, Damien Blackwood whispered poison, the embezzlement, the leaks. Though skeptical, 20 years of trust in her brother eclipsed day-old marital loyalty. Searching for proof in Alexander's study, she found a leather notebook tucked in his desk's hidden drawer. As it opened, a photograph slipped out her at 18, radiantly smiling on that page. Bold script declared, 18-year-old Evelyn Sinclair shines with dazzling brilliance. Another photo, 20 years old. The inscription, 20-year-old Evelyn Sinclair, smiles just as brightly, holding another man's arm. In that moment, I knew I'd stop at nothing to keep her. Next page, her 22nd birthday, their wedding year, smiling beside Alexander, her radiance tempered by newfound maturity. His words sliced deep. "I'm at 22, Evelyn Sinclair fell into my hands through dishonorable means." Only 3 pages bore writing. That confession validated Damien's lies. Thereafter, Evelyn warred openly with Alexander. He refused divorce, yet gave her everything, abandoning their home. They only reunited to appease their parents. His parents lived abroad. Hers adored him, unaware of the betrayal. Evelyn played the charade, though detesting her husband's hypocrisy during these performances. His flawless acting nauseated her. Now she understood. The betrayal was Damien's doing. Access to those documents restricted to key figures like him. Alexander ruled Kyoto's financial empire. Why resort to petty schemes? Those notebook entries must have meant something entirely different. Chapter 3. Winning him back, I won't divorce. Evelyn Sinclair's hand trembled slightly as she held the divorce papers. I'd rather die than agree. She refused to divorce. Heaven had granted her another chance to love him properly, and she was determined to hold on. Alexander Kingsley looked at her, his eyes unreadable. After a moment, he turned toward the floor-to-ceiling window. After the divorce, he said calmly, avoiding her gaze, collaboration with the Sterling family projects will continue. You'll take 60% of our marital assets. Should your family face difficulties, this sum will sustain them, though phrased as marital assets. These were Alexander Kingsley's personal funds. Yet even offering this fortune wouldn't deter him from divorcing. Evelyn Sinclair curled her fingers, staring at his tall, unyielding back. Coolness from the tile floor seeped into her bare feet. In past arguments, he would have carried her to put on slippers. Now he noticed her bare feet, but remained indifferent. In this lifetime, it seemed, Alexander Kingsley no longer wanted her. She drew a deep breath. What did that matter? Now I would love him previously. Her affection had been buried deep within. This time, suppressed feelings would bloom freely. Moving beside him, she gazed out the window before tilting her head toward him. Alexander Kingsley, I don't want a divorce. I don't care about the money. I only want you. A flash of surprise crossed his dark eyes, gone too quickly for her to catch. Sign it, hesitating. Evelyn Sinclair clutched her stomach, contorting her face in feigned agony. My stomach, it must be bad food. Best to escape. This sudden divorce demand had blindsided her, and she needed time to strategize. I'll rest upstairs. We'll discuss the divorce later. Wincing dramatically, she scampered upstairs and locked her bedroom door. Exhaling in relief, this lifetime's Alexander Kingsley was frighteningly persistent about divorcing her. Hearing no movement, she cracked the door open and peered downstairs. Still there, Margaret Thorne stood before him, speaking quietly. Hiding around the corner, Evelyn Sinclair listened intent. Alexander Kingsley, Madam often goes barefoot. Ensure you remind her to wear slippers. Margaret Thorne. Of course, he continued. She's prone to skipping breakfast unless awakened. Make certain she eats. Margaret Thorne nodded, concerned. Sir, I heard Madam complain of stomach pain. Shall we call the house doctor? Amusement glinted in Alexander Kingsley's gaze. Unnecessary. She's acting. Ah! Before Margaret Thorne could react, he departed with the divorce papers. Evelyn Sinclair stifled a giggle upstairs. He must still care. Why else would he leave her most of his fortune and instruct Margaret Thorne so meticulously? All while ignoring her charade, Margaret Thorne appeared with hot water, startling as Evelyn Sinclair uncurled from her hiding spot. Madam, what were you? Nothing. Evelyn Sinclair rose smooth. Your stomach? Margaret Thorne I faked it. Margaret Thorne stared speechless. What sort of game were these two playing? Evelyn Sinclair took the water to her room, changed and drove to the Sterling residence. She rushed inside and collapsed into Eleanor Whittaker and Edward Sterling's arms, sobbing violently. Bewildered, they comforted their cherished daughter, fearing she'd been wronged. I'm fine, she sniffled. I just missed you. Eleanor Whittaker smoothed her hair. But you visited 3 days ago. 3 years, Mother. Each day felt endless. Evelyn Sinclair buried her damp face in Eleanor Whittaker's shoulder. Little rascal. Eleanor Whittaker tapped her nose fondly. Where's Sophia Ashford? At university, darling. You know that. Sophia Ashford, a year younger than Evelyn Sinclair, had always been the responsible daughter, unlike her occasionally rebellious sis. I forgot. Evelyn Sinclair nuzzled Eleanor Whittaker's neck. I missed your cooking. Smiling, Eleanor Whittaker headed for the kitchen. Greedy girl, I'll prepare something now. Thank you, Mother. The moment Eleanor Whittaker left, Evelyn Sinclair's expression hardened. She faced Edward Sterling. Father, he embezzled company funds and leaked secrets. Any suspects? Edward Sterling studied her. Why ask? It's Damien Blackwood. Her voice turned icy. His kindness is a facade. He's never considered us family guard against him. Edward Sterling paused before nodding. Noted. He privately suspected Damien Blackwood too, but evidence remained elusive. Lacking proof, Damien Blackwood remained his son. As Evelyn Sinclair emphasized her warning, Edward Sterling listened gravely. Her abrupt distrust of Damien Blackwood, whom she'd adored unconditionally, signaled grave discoveries. Clutching her father's arm, she leaned against him. Whatever it took, she'd prevent next year's fatal fire, meant to claim them all. Damien Blackwood couldn't hide forever. She'd uncover proof and ensure justice. Hatred burned in her dark eyes. Alexander Kingsley's life debt she would repay. Her family's, Damien Blackwood would. Edward Sterling frowned. Are those tears over Alexander Kingsley hurting you? Evelyn Sinclair masked her fury with a light smile. He didn't hurt me. It was me. I wounded him. Alexander Kingsley never harmed her. She was the offender, misled into hurting him. Edward Sterling squeezed her shoulder. Treasure what you have with him. His methods might have been unorthodox, but his love was undeniable. I will. She'd protect him at any cost. I won't cause him pain again because I love him. After lunch, she returned home by 3 that evening. Lying in bed after bathing, she recalled never once sharing this marital bed with Alexander Kingsley in her past life. An agonizing regret. Gazing at the empty space beside her, she sighed. How could she reclaim him? This mansion that once felt comfortably empty, now echoed with loneliness and dread. Changing clothes, she grabbed her purse and encountered Margaret Thorne. When asked her destination and whether to call the driver, Evelyn Sinclair refused. After a few steps, she turned back. Margaret Thorne, do you think he still loves me? Margaret Thorne sighed. Madam, why even question the master's feelings? Understanding dawned love. Evelyn Sinclair smiled. I'm bringing Alexander Kingsley home. Without waiting for a reply, she drove to the city centre villa where he now resided. Security stopped her at the gated community. Fortunately, Edward Sterling had purchased villas here for her and Sophia Ashford years earlier. Confirmation took 10 minutes before the guard waved her through. Though she'd visited once after marriage, she found the house easy. The black iron gates stood open inside. She scanned the empty living room until a voice called out, "Madam, when did you arrive?" Mr. Zhang, located from the mansion with Alexander Kingsley, beamed. "Mr. Zhang, is Alexander Kingsley here?" "Not yet." His eyes sparkled. The master would rejoice, knowing she'd come. Evelyn Sinclair settled onto the sofa, assuring him she'd wait till last in Chapter 4, the one Yane promise. Evelyn Sinclair felt apprehensive, afraid that Alexander Kingsley would bring up divorce again. But she couldn't avoid facing it forever. By 10 in the evening, Evelyn Sinclair was feeling sleepy. Uncle Zhang entered, suggesting she stop waiting, but she insisted, bound by propriety between employer and servant. He had no choice but to leave at 11. She succumbed to sleep on the sofa as rain began to fall outside. Her sleep was light. Hearing familiar footsteps, she woke, but kept her eyes closed faintly. Sensing his approach, she felt a hand slip beneath her knees. Moments later, lifting her up, Alexander Kingsley carried her toward the guest bedroom. Peeking through lowered lashes, Evelyn Sinclair wrapped her arms around his neck. He cared for her even if she didn't understand why he wanted a divorce. Or perhaps he no longer loved her, and this was merely marital obloquy. He noticed her opened eyes, but didn't acknowledge it, keeping his gaze forward, never looking down at her after placing her on the bed. Alexander Kingsley stood to leave, but she clung fiercely to his neck. Meeting his fathomless dark eyes, she smiled coyly. "Alexander Kingsley, you still care for me, don't you?" He stiffened imperceptibly, his expression frosty, voice devoid of emotion. "No." She searched his face for any flicker of feeling, but found only detachment. "Why do you want a divorce?" she asked, brows furrow. He pried her hands from his neck, tone icy. "It's best for both of us." "It's not best at all." Sitting up, she met his gaze earnestly. "I was wrong. I acted recklessly. You don't have to forgive me, but I beg you, don't divorce me. Be angry with me, hit me, scold me, or even stab me. Just don't end this." At the mention of stabbing, his brow twitched, almost imperceptible. Memories of her past life betrayals flooded back, overwhelmed by guilt. She slapped herself hard, warm fingers closed around her wrist. Looking up, she found Alexander Kingsley looming over her jaw tight, voice harsh. "What are you doing?" Though her cheek bore red marks, she felt no pain. "Let's divorce, but give me 1 year. If you still want it, then I'll agree. No property claims, please. I've never asked anything of you. Just this once." She resolved to devote herself wholly to him. Regardless of the outcome, assured she wouldn't harm herself again, he released her and left, believing he refused. She sighed, staring at the ceiling. He truly had chains in this life. Everyone remained the same, except him. A minute later, movement drew her gaze. Alexander Kingsley returned with an ice pack and towel, handing them over coolly. "Apply this yourself." She stared blankly. In their past life, he tended her wounds, personally allowing no refusal. Now, even this small gesture felt like abundance. "Thank you. And the observation period, fine." He left, shutting the door. Thrilled, she tossed restlessly until exhaustion claimed her just before dawn, plotting how to cherish him. Waking early, she washed and headed to the kid, despite her mothering culinary genius. Evelyn Sinclair could manage toast without disgracing her uncle. Sound entered as she arrived. She smiled politely. "I'll handle breakfast. Rest a while." "Worried?" he asked. "Can you manage, madam?" "I can." In her past life, though hostile toward Alexander Kingsley, she'd always treated the staff kindly. They respected her in return. Uncertain of Alexander Kingsley's preferences, she cooked both Chinese and Western dishes, 2 laborious hours surveying her spread. She blessed her gourmet mother's genetics. She swelled with pride. While other children dreamt big, she'd coasted, napping through elementary classes, counting minutes until dismissal. Making edible breakfast warranted some self-congratulatory descended. Immaculate in his tailored suit, radiating aristocratic grace, Uncle Sam approached. "Summon madam for breakfast." Alexander Kingsley ordered before Uncle Zhang could reply. A head poked from the kitchen, spatula in hand. Present. He blinked. Madam prepared everything, Uncle Zhang explained. I see. Entering the dining room, he paused at the laden table. She called out, Start without me. Eggs are almost done. Soon she presented the final dish. A little of everything, pick your favorites. Don't cook again, he stayed. Evelyn Sinclair ignored the remark. Try it. He ate silently. Was it good? Terrible, she had no clue. Her own assessment passable, mediocre cosmopolitan brun, the way to a man in heart being through his stomach. She resolved to master soups, stir-fries, every cuisine starting today. Post-breakfast, Alexander Kingsley wiped his hands. I'd send you home, she froze. But I'm under observation. Cohabitation is essential for assessment. How else can you gauge improvement? Light sparked in her eyes. Unless you return to Kingsley Manor with me. He remained sigh. Choose. I remain here, or you accompany me. Whatever excuse you concoct, I'd stay planted wherever you are. She'd become human adhesive, impossible to scrape off after a waited pause. To Kingsley Manor. Perfect. Beaming, she added. Need packing help. As he moved to leave, she darted before him in the living room, grasping his coat. She tiptoed, brushing her lips fleetingly against his. I'd await you at Kingsley Manor. Drive safely. His lips burned with residual warmth. Stunned, he stared as she retreated upstairs. He watched until she vanished before finally departed. Elated, Evelyn Sinclair soon returned to her family home. Confronting her deepest hate, Damien Blackwood sat there. Rage surged. He'd orchestrated the fire, killing her parents and sister, tricked her into murdering her beloved, watching him charm Edward Sterling and Eleanor Whittaker. She sneered inwardly his gentle facade. Only Rebirth revealed this jade gentleman as a Montsy 1-1. What brings you? Damien Blackwood greeted warm. My home, my timing, she retorted flatly. Need your permission. Caught off guard, he touched his nose nervously. Eleanor Whittaker chided her soothingly. Marmot, define, Damien Blackwood interjected. 1-1 seems upset. Naturally. Elena Sinclair fumed inwardly. Eleanor Whittaker frowned but stayed silent. Sophia Ashford was usually spared Evelyn Sinclair and I, Sophia home upstairs. Edward Sterling nodded, ignoring Damien Blackwood. Evelyn Sinclair headed up, knocking on Sophia Ashford's door. Enter. Sophia Ashford, packed, barely glancing up. Evelyn Sinclair, eyes stung. Miss Sinclair, treasure your hour with a genius before she departs, the younger sister declared. Evelyn Sinclair chuckled, sorrow banished. Mentally unsound, tossing clothes aside. Sophia Ashford clung to her arm. Sis, the saccharine address chilled Evelyn Sinclair's spine. Trouble always followed that tone, arm-waggling plea. Allowance vaporized, spare change. Pouting. Dearest sis, Miss Sinclair, watch your blood can starve on instant noodles. Fine. Evelyn Sinclair surrendered. Sending it, what extravagance drained you? Outspending even me. Post-transfer, flattery completed. Sophia Ashford answered, limited edition figurine. Evelyn Sinclair sighed knowingly. Predictable. Evelyn Sinclair let Alexander Kingsley hold her, curling up on the sofa as if seeking warmth. Her fingertips lightly traced the raised scar on Alexander Kingsley's palm, a childhood injury inflicted by his own hand. This scar remained ever sharp in her memory. Alexander Kingsley. Evelyn Sinclair raised her head, her gaze exploring his meticulously sculpted features before asking, where were you when I was abroad? She lived through life's most arduous years alone. Alexander Kingsley gently smoothed the stray hairs at her temple. I once went to see you. You saw me? Surprise widened Evelyn Sinclair's eyes. When? Where? On your 20th birthday in Stockholm, Alexander Kingsley replied, his eyes holding a complex way. Evelyn Sinclair was stunned. Her 20th birthday, she had indeed been in Stockholm from our first separation. I always knew your whereabouts. Alexander Kingsley's voice carried a quiet surety. Visiting you was the one uncontrollable moment. Evelyn Sinclair held him tighter, her voice muffled against his chest. When I was sick in the hospital, did you know? I knew. Just those two words tightened Alexander Kingsley's grip around her waist, that helpless pang of heartache and longing. He never wanted to endure it again. Zheng Guiqi stayed by your side. Evelyn Sinclair's eyes slightly reddened. So he knew every tired. Alexander Kingsley bent down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Holding you for a nap. Evelyn Sinclair shook her head. I'm not sleepy. She curled her fingers into his shirt and whispered, I want to keep hugging you forever. Alexander Kingsley smiled faintly and indulged her. Then, as if remembering something, he asked, I heard Damien Blackwood bought an apartment. Mia. Evelyn Sinclair nodded and ignored him. Alexander Kingsley inquired further, when is he moving in? He claimed it's furnished and ready for immediate move-in. Evelyn Sinclair recalled her brother's words, looking up at him. What brought this up? Sophia Ashford is still staying at Morgan's villa. That was temporary, Evelyn Sinclair explained. He'll move soon. Alexander Kingsley tightened his lips. As long as Damien Blackwood was alive, his stay next door was definite. That night journey through the mountains to find Evelyn Sinclair. Had Damien Blackwood not pleaded to take his life in exchange for hers, they might never have arrived in time. Edward Sterling called earlier. Alexander Kingsley changed the subject. Eleanor Whittaker's been intensely depressed late. Evelyn Sinclair felt nothing but cold indifference towards Eleanor Whittaker now. If not for Harrison Reed's sudden appearance trapping Alexander Kingsley at Morgan's villa that stormy night, she wouldn't have endured such tear. Margaret Thorne had guarded her all these years for Harrison Reed to nearly. Evelyn Sinclair dared not think further. The deeper his entanglement with her mother became, the more poisonous the relationship became. She's brought it upon herself, Evelyn Sinclair said flatly, without emotion. People must answer for their choices. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Justice, long delayed, had arrived. Separate storylines briefly appeared. Isabella Van Doren. Isabella, what's wrong? Sebastian Thorne held her waist. Lucian Cross. Pen in hand, Lucian Cross glanced up. How much? Story sequence. Evelyn Sinclair and Alexander Kingsley, Isabella Van Doren and Sebastian Thorne, Lucian Cross and future love interest. Chapter 5. Legally married couple. She knew her sister Sophia Ashford quite well, besides collecting limited edition figurines. Sophia had no other hobbies. Sophia glanced at the money Evelyn Sinclair transferred to her and tossed her phone onto the bed. The sun must be rising in the west. Evelyn, muttered Sophia, why transfer so much suddenly? Half would have been enough. What's wrong with extra money? Evelyn shot her a look. Don't want it. Send it back. Fine, fine. Sophia, fearing Evelyn might change her mind, hastily agreed. Who sends money away only to take it back? As Sophia finished packing, it was time to head to school. Evelyn looked at her sternly. If you need money or have problems in the future, come straight to me. Don't go looking for Damien Blackwood, and never go anywhere alone with him. Got it? Sophia puzzled. Why? Evelyn used to always tell her to listen to Damien. Now Sophia sensed deep hostility in her tone. He's not the Damien Blackwood we once knew, Evelyn said. I'm your sister. I wouldn't hurt you. Remember what I said. Sophia wouldn't believe the truth about the company crisis yet. I'll explain why, Evelyn added, but not now. Sheltered by their parents from childhood, neither understood life's cruelties. Sophia, especially innocent and kind-hearted, trusted everyone more than Evelyn did. Sophia nodded. She loved her sister far more than Damien understood. But what if Damien approaches me? Ignore him outright or make an excuse. Sophia. I got it. Evelyn needed to find evidence. Fast Damien couldn't stay in the Sterling household. Downstairs, Edward Sterling and Eleanor Whittaker alone remained with Damien gone. After their driver took Sophia to school, Evelyn pestered Eleanor to teach her cooking. Eleanor teased, our pampered heiress finally learns to care for others. What can I do? Evelyn chuckled, unabashed. I love him, don't I? Eleanor clicked her tongue twice. So cheesy, but Kingsley truly deserves it. Your father and I both adore Kingsley. Obviously, Evelyn retorted. Seems you like your son-in-law more than your own daughter. Such sass. Eleanor laughed, lightly tapping Evelyn's forehead. What was with you today? The way you spoke to your brother? Just a bad mood?" Eleanor eyed her skeptically but didn't press, merely chiding her not to take frustrations out on others. Evelyn listened with distracted nods, with Alexander Kingsley returning to the Vansworth estate. Evelyn learned 2 dishes before heading home early, tomorrow being Sunday. Edward asked Evelyn to bring Alexander for dinner. She hesitated. Would he still play along? She only said Alexander might be busy. Home alone before Alexander's return. Evelyn cooked the dishes she'd learned. Margaret Thorne studied the plates. Presentation looked fine, but flavor remained unknown. She couldn't fathom why Evelyn suddenly insisted on cooking. Though expecting kitchen chaos from the sheltered heiress, the reality proved different. Chopping and stir-frying showed inexperience, but no disaster struck. After serving those 2 dishes, she left the rest to Margaret, insisting she not reveal the cook. Alexander seemed to disapprove of Evelyn entering the kitchen. Anyway, if he enjoyed the food, authorship didn't matter. 6 o'clock passed without Alexander every few minutes. Evelyn peered outside like a watchful statue waiting her husband. At twilight, she stood by the entrance. 7 already. Where was he? Had he forgotten their agreement, or never intended to come back? Was his morning promise just appeasement? She dismissed the thought. Business dinner, overtime work, perhaps. Turning to re-enter, an engine purred behind her. A Cayenne stopped before her. Alexander emerged. Meeting her hopeful eyes, he offered an unsolicited explanation. Needy to retrieve something from the other residents, Mr. Zhang accompanied him. Evelyn cared only that he'd returned. Joy flooded her voice with unconscious vulnerability. "Thought you wouldn't come." Alexander stayed silent at dinner. Evelyn watched him repeatedly choose her asterisk dishes. She hid a small triumphant smile, unaware he'd recognized her culinary touch immediately. Alexander quietly indulged her secret happiness. She seemed different. Post-dinner, Alexander ascended without conversation. Evelyn followed. "Free tomorrow? Dad wants us over for dinner." He halted abruptly. Evelyn crashed into his back. Nose-stinging tears welled. His back felt like granite. He turned, finding her cupping her nose, eyes glistening like an abandoned kitten begging for shelter. Pity stirred him. Taking her wrist, he lowered her hand. Her nose tip glowed red. His concern numbed half her pain instantly. "Doesn't hurt," she insisted, releasing her. His tone cooled. "Watch where you walk." "See?" Evelyn snapped to attention, arms straight at her sides. "Alexander, time tomorrow." "Ha!" She'd almost forgotten. 3 p.m., departure? "Okay." "Mom," he nodded impassively. Evelyn probed. "Will you be home all day?" "Unclear." Alexander studied her. "Sleep early." A sly gleam sparked in Evelyn's eyes. "Will do." He paused. Had he imagined mischief, maybe? As he walked to his room, Evelyn followed, slipping under his arm before the door closed. Back against the wood, she met his questioning gaze with sweetly dimpled cheeks. "What? Time to sleep." His instinct proved right. Alexander's voice frothed over, "Out." "No." Evelyn looped arms around his neck, pressing close enough to share breaths. Alexander's rhythm faltered. She laughed softly. "We're legally married. We sleep together." A playful blink. "Don't worry. I won't do anything. Won't force you into." Her smile turned impish, that sort of thing. Though I did think about it. But her expression sobered. "I respect you, Alexander." Chapter 6. Sleeping Together. Alexander Kingsley closed his eyes, as if trying hard to endure something. He pulled Evelyn Sinclair, who was leaning against the door, opened it, and was about to throw her out. When he opened the door, Evelyn had already devised a strategy. She immediately sat on the floor, wrapping her arms around his long legs. Looking up at him with pitiful, pleading eyes, she cooed, "Brother, please don't send me away." Her voice was soft and delicate, a mix of coaxing and stubbornness. Alexander frowned slightly, his deep eyes filled with helplessness as he commanded, "Get up." "I won't." If she kept pretending to be reserved and dignified, she'd lose her husband. "Let's sleep together, Evelyn." Alexander looked down at her, suppressing anger, his voice heavy with authority. She clung tightly to his leg and met his gaze. "Call me Evie? That's what you used to call me?" Evelyn had a knack for being shameless, Even she admired how brazen she'd become. Rebirth had unexpectedly unleashed this talent, which wasn't a bad thing at all. Worn down by her persistence, Alexander found himself stuck in a dilemma, couldn't leave nor stay. Had it been anyone else, he wouldn't have had this much patience. "What exactly do you want?" "I've already said it, to sleep together." She blinked innocently at him. "First, let go of my leg. If I let go, will you agree to sleep together?" She wasn't a naive little girl anymore, and wouldn't fall for such a trick so easily. What if he ran away once she let go? Alexander's jaw tightened. After a moment he uttered, "Yes. Liar will turn into a puppy. Here, I'm letting go." She released his leg, grabbed his shirt to support herself as she stood up, then smiled sheepishly before closing and locking the bedroom door. Time to sleep. While preparing for a shower, she realized there were no pajamas for her in Alexander's room. If she went back to her own room to retrieve them, he might lock her out as soon as she stepped through the door. Getting back would be harder than leaving. She opened the wardrobe and took out one of Alexander's shirts. It fit him perfectly but was oversized on her, loose and billowy. Emerging from the shower, she dried her dripping hair with a towel. Her slender, shapely legs and fair, delicate skin peeked out beneath the shirt, creating an aura of both innocence and allure. Alexander, sitting on the edge of the bed, flipping through a magazine, glanced at her for several moments before subtly shifting his gaze back to the pages. Evelyn stood before the floor mirror, drying her hair. "This shirt is a bit too big," she said, dissatisfied. It didn't show off her figure. She'd been secretly observing Alexander since stepping out of the bathroom. Apart from that one glance earlier, he hadn't looked at her again. She considered herself decently proportioned, slender where she should be, and full in the right places. Why wouldn't he look at her more? Tossing the towel aside, she made her way toward the bed. Alexander finally shot her a glance, his expression slightly displeased. "Dry your hair properly before getting into bed. You're the boss." She hadn't even touched the bed yet, but obediently returned to the bathroom. By the time she returned with dried hair, an extra blanket was laid out on the bed. Evelyn picked it up. "Is this for me?" Alexander gave a light hum in affirmation. Evelyn almost choked with frustration. She wasn't some wolf he had to guard against like this. "What do you think I'm going to do to you?" "Who knows?" Alexander tossed out the words before grabbing his clothes and walking into the bathroom. Evelyn huffed and folded the extra blanket back into the wardrobe. She then slipped into the right side of the bed, pulling up the covers. Lying in his room, surrounded by a comforting sense of security, her mind relaxed. By the time Alexander emerged from the bathroom, she had already fallen into a deep sleep, her breath soft and even. Alexander stood beside the bed, his gaze gentle as he watched the young woman asleep, a stark contrast to the distant coldness he showed during the day. "Why suddenly start treating me nicely?" His question hung in the air, directed at the sleeping figure, or perhaps at himself. Switching off the main lights, leaving just one softened floor lamp, he sat by the bedside watching her quietly. After a while he stood, turned off the lamp, left the bedroom, and made his way to his study. Almost like her subconscious knew that the source of her security had walked away. Evelyn started having a nightmare the moment Alexander left. By 2 a.m, she jerked awake from the nightmare in terror. Turning on the lamp, beads of sweat glistened on her forehead under the soft light. Looking beside her, she found the left side of the bed empty. She cursed under her breath. "Alexander Kingsley, you big liar." She didn't know whether he had merely left their room or the entire Sterling mansion. Hollow emptiness filled her inside. Now she almost regretted forcing him to sleep together. If she hadn't pestered him, perhaps he wouldn't have gone. She pushed back the covers and slipped out of bed. Downstairs, the living room was quiet. He must have left already, far from sleepy in the deep of the night. She descended the stairs and headed to the backyard garden. All was silent, except for a hint of flower fragrance. She sat in the pavilion, letting the night breeze cool. How late September brought a touch of chill at midnight. This atmosphere calmed her heart a little. In this tranquility, her predicament surfaced. How do I handle Alexander? It seems he doesn't actually like being near me. Sitting for a while longer, she lifted her head toward the night sky, only to spot the light on in the study on the second floor. Alexander! Jumping to her feet, she took off at a run, racing back to the second floor. One of her slippers flew off midway without her looking back. Barefoot on one foot, she bounded to the study door. Holding her breath, she gently pushed it open. Hearing the noise, the man behind the desk looked up. Alexander's expression was impossible to decipher as he immediately took note of her bare foot. His brow creased almost imperceptibly. Evelyn suddenly beamed. The earlier disappointment in her heart vanished entirely. "I thought you'd left," she declared before throwing him a playfully scolding glance. "Alexander Kingsley, you're a big liar." "I had some work to handle," Alexander replied smoothly. "Where is your other shoe?" Evelyn glanced down and giggled slightly in embarrassment. "It fell off." "Where?" "On the stairs." Alexander rose and exited the study. When he returned, he had the missing slipper. Setting it at her feet, he gently wrapped one hand around her ankle and guided her foot into it. She looked at him, warmth blooming internally. Striding upright, he asked her, "Not asleep?" "I had a nightmare," Evelyn then queried. "Still working? Still a few things to finish." Evelyn pointed toward the sofa inside the study. "Can I sit here and wait for you? I promise not to disturb." A slight shiver passed through her, chilled by the garden breeze, and dressed thinly, and she sneezed. Alexander paused briefly. "Go back to bed, okay?" Feeling rejected, she didn't press further and simply turned to leave, but Alexander shut the study door and followed her. Hearing footsteps behind her, Evelyn stopped and looked back. "You're not working anymore." "Ma'am," he acknowledged. Evelyn's eyes brightened. "Coming to sleep with me?" Neither confirming nor denying, Alexander followed her back into the bedroom and closed the door. "Sleep." Glowing inside, she climbed back onto the bed. Patting the space beside her, she invited, "You too." "I'm not tired," Alexander resisted. "Then I'm not sleepy either." Her fear was that he'd leave again. "I'm not leaving." He sat on the bed near her, reassuring her, "Sleep." The realization struck her then. She only wanted him to stay. And he'd been working all night. Of course he needed rest. She was bothering him. Rising, she slipped out of the covers. "You rest, I'll go back to my own room." She smiled apologetically and turned to leave, only for his hand to encircle her wrist. Alexander pulled her back, gently, commanding, "Sleep." Evelyn froze momentarily. Alexander switched off the lamp and got into bed, settling on the left side. For a long moment, Evelyn was completely still when awareness returned. A smile curled her lips, lying down beside him. Pure delight suffused her within. Chapter 7. Between the couple, Evelyn Sinclair didn't expect Alexander Kingsley to treat her as before. As long as he didn't push her away, she was content. Hearts don't turn cold in a day, nor can they warm quickly. With Alexander's back toward her in bed, Evelyn quietly moved closer without touching him. Leaving a measured gap, merely sharing the bed brought her joy. Their relationship seemed slightly better. Feeling secure near him, she soon fell asleep. Hearing her steady breathing, Alexander turned to face her. The next morning, Alexander's side of the bed was cold when Evelyn awoke. After washing up, Margaret Thorne called her for breakfast. Opening her bedroom door, Evelyn greeted her before asking, "Where's Alexander Kingsley?" "He's in the living room," Margaret replied, her gaze lingering meaningfully on Evelyn's neck. Noticing no intimate marks, she sighed discreetly. At least they'd spend the night together peacefully. Evelyn patted Margaret's shoulder knowingly. "Patience, some pressure isn't helpful." Margaret flushed at being caught. Downstairs, Alexander sat on the sofa browsing political news on his tablet. Seeing Evelyn, he locked the screen and ordered coolly, "Breakfast." She followed silently to the dining room. Alexander stayed home all day, speaking only when necessary. Later, as they sat together, Evelyn watching TV, Alexander scrolling his phone, her attention kept drifting toward him. His phone rang, revealing a contact Evelyn instantly recognized, Isabella Van Doren. Evelyn's brow furrowed. She remembered arranging Alexander's number for this childhood neighbor after Isabella moved. A broader, misguided ploy against him in her past life. Though aware he was married, Isabella persistently pursued Alexander. Evelyn regretted her past indifference as she watched him abruptly decline the call. Her relief disappeared when Isabella immediately called again, sparking visible annoyance in Alexander. "May I handle this?" Evelyn offered after a pause. He surrendered his phone. Triumph curved Evelyn's lips, answering with feigned drowsiness, Evelyn asked, "Who is it?" "Oh, Isabella, your Alexander Kingsley is resting." She deliberately yawned. "Couples, you know, he exhausted himself all night. I'll get him to call later." Alexander's eyebrow lifted slightly. Evelyn smoothly hung up, blowing. That should stop her. Alexander merely hummed, clearly noting this crisis stemmed from her past actions. "Change your number?" she proposed. "Agreed," he murmured. After choosing linked numbers at a telecom store, a clerk beamed. "Such couple goals. May you last forever." "Thanks," Evelyn smiled. By 2 p.m. They drove toward the Sterling residence at a stoplight. She urged, "Please don't act cold at my parents." "Okay," he responded neutrally. Upon arrival, Alexander carried gift boxes. As they entered, arm in arm, Evelyn's gaze swept past Damien Blackwood toward Edward Sterling and Eleanor Whitaker. "Mom, Daddy," Eleanor welcomed Alexander warmly. "So glad you came. Join us." Alexander returned their greeting. "Thank you," Edward echoed. "Sit, please." Eleanor scolded lightly while accepting gifts. "No more gifts. We're family." "Understood." Alexander, obliged, seated beside Evelyn, his eyes locked onto Damien sharp as blades. While her parents admired him, Evelyn asked, "Why isn't Sophia Ashford home?" "Prepping for exams," Eleanor replied. "Before heading to the kitchen soon?" Damien inquired smoothly. "Everything well in work and life, brother-in-law?" His polite tone hid malice. Eyes flashing cold, Evelyn locked arms with Alexander. "I can't speak work, but life." Blushing toward Edward, she teased, "You might hold grandchildren soon." Alexander remained silent, assuming this was just parental appeasement. End of chapter 8. The fog of love, the smile on Damien Blackwood's lips, froze momentarily. Edward Sterling beamed upon hearing this. "Splendid, you young folks. Put in more effort so your mother and I can soon hold our grandchild." "We will." Evelyn Sinclair smiled at Alexander Kingsley. "You chat with Dad. I'll help Mom with dinner." "Hoon," Alexander Kingsley cautioned. "Be careful with the knife. Don't cut yourself." Evelyn Sinclair nodded obediently. Though aware Alexander was merely playing along for her parents' sake, her heart still fluttered. Both mistakenly believed they were acting, oblivious their words stemmed from genuine feelings. Evelyn yearned for a child with Alexander Kingsley, just as Alexander wished she'd protect herself from harm. Yet such truths could only surface beneath their charade. Edward Sterling teased, "You two already married, yet acting more besotted than new lovers." Evelyn rose, chin lifted. "We'll be besotted even when we're old." "Fine, fine, whatever makes you youngsters happy." As Evelyn passed Damien Blackwood, he opened his mouth to speak. She ignored him completely and entered the kitchen with only 2 dishes in her repertoire. She focused on washing vegetables rather than embarrassing herself, leaving the culinary mastery to her mother amid rinsing greens. Eleanor Whitaker inquired, "What's going on between you and your brother? You were inseparable before. Why so cold now?" Her hands paused. After a beat, Evelyn answered nonchalantly, "I'm lover-struck. Where Alexander Kingsley exists, others fade from view." Eleanor sighed. "Damien Blackwood is your brother." "Not by blood," Evelyn mumbled, disappointed. Eleanor prodded her forehead. "You ungrateful child. How can you say that? Have you forgotten how devoted he's been? No birth brother could match his care." Evelyn's eyes flashed with bitterness. Precisely because Damien had seemed so caring, she trusted him blindly, until he deceived her into destroying the man she loved most. She had less than a year to ensure Damien faced utter ruin. "We've grown up. I'm married now. Proper distance is appropriate." Explaining the future horrors would only brand her mad, since the family catastrophe hadn't unfolded yet. Distance doesn't require such coldness. Privately, without the Kingsley marriage rescuing the Sterling finances, Eleanor would have paired her daughter with Damien, raised alongside Evelyn since age 6. He seemed flawless in character and capability, a perfect match without in-law conflicts. But Edward Sterling discouraged the idea through evasions before Evelyn chose Alexander. Evelyn's voluntary wedding proposer, a voice interrupted before Evelyn could reply. Her brows briefly furrowed, then relaxed. Eleanor took the vegetables and nudged her out. "Go on, your brother needs you." Evelyn sighed. Meeting Damien's gaze, she untied her apron and followed him upstairs to the study. When Damien moved to close the door, she stopped him. Let it stay open. Improper for an unmarried woman and man to be secluded together, plus Alexander might come looking. His hand paused, but withdrew. Maintaining his graceful composure, Damien asked, "Evelyn, is something wrong?" "Nothing," she replied coolly. "Are you in love with Alexander Kingsley?" "Yes, deeply." Her eyes shone with conviction. Damien stared with palpable disappointment. "Evelyn, have you forgotten his actions against Sterling Enterprise?" Seeing her adoring glances in the living room, confirmed this was no act. She truly loved Alexander. Evelyn's lips curved. "There's no evidence connecting Alexander to Sterling's financial crisis. Who else in Kyoto could orchestrate it flawlessly?" Damien insisted. "Don't let infatuation blind you to how close we came to bankruptcy last month." Observing his righteous indignation, one might imagine Alexander committed unforgivable atrocities, the same deception that ensnared her past life. "Without evidence," Evelyn countered. "Even if Alexander caused it, he only sought to keep me near. He fixed Sterling's financial ruin and strengthened it beyond its original state. My parents adore him. I see no issue." Frustrated, Damien pinched his brow, then seized her shoulders. "Must you be so lover-struck? I'm deeply disappointed in you." The expression lover-struck sounded absurd coming from him. Evelyn stepped back, evading his grip. "Nothing can part us unless Alexander discards me himself, even if he commits marriage's ultimate sin, domestic violence. I'd accept death by his hand. Alexander's innate nobility would never permit abuse if such violence ever occurred. She owed him her life regardless, merely repaying her debt. What if he cheats?" Damien's gentle facade shattered. "Wouldn't you leave then?" "Never." Spinning to depart, she froze upon seeing Alexander Kingsley leaning against the doorway. How long had he been there? Banishing her scornful expression, Evelyn beamed sweetly and hooked her arm through his. "When did you arrive just now?" His complex gaze swept across her before settling on Damien. Assuming he was jealous, as her past self often witnessed, she suggested, "Shall we stroll in the backyard?" He agreed quietly. Unbeknownst to her, he'd overheard every word, marking the first time their private conversation left him, jealousy-free, hand in hand on the stairs. Alexander enveloped her palm within his. Edward Sterling shook his head at such affection. They couldn't stand minutes apart, with Alexander following Evelyn upstairs moments after her ascent. Even his youthful self never displayed such clinginess in the garden. Evelyn smiled her joy unconcealed. "Your hands are so warm. I wish you'd hold me like this at Kingsley Manor." Here it was mere acting. Her sigh revealed fleeting sadness, noticed instantly by Alexander. "All right, truly." Her eyes brightened. Feeling dreamlike, Evelyn pinched his cheek gently. "Hurts?" "No." She withdrew her hand and pinched her own cheek sharply. Wincing at the pain, she suddenly laughed. "It does hurt, so this isn't a dream. No take-backs now, or you're a puppy, surely." "Alexander Puppy Kingsley isn't your ambition." Radiant laughter pushed vengeance from her mind, now filled solely with him. Chapter 9. Sleeping with you. Alexander Kingsley looked at her. The last rays of the sunset cast a soft glow upon her, enveloping the girl before him in a gentle filter. After a moment, he lifted his gaze toward the study window on the second floor, his eyes unreadable. Noticing his line of sight, Evelyn Sinclair followed his look toward the study, but saw nothing unusual. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "It's nothing." Just before dinner, the two returned indoors. Edward Sterling glanced at them and shook his head subtly. Eleanor Whittaker, having prepared the meal, called everyone to the table. At dinner, Evelyn first served food to her parents. Eleanor couldn't resist teasing her daughter lightly. Evelyn simply smiled and placed food into the dish before Alexander Kingsley. "Dad's truly fortunate to have a culinary goddess like Mom," she said, addressing Alexander. Alexander's expression softened slightly. "Man, Dad is lucky indeed." Eleanor looked pleased yet slightly embarrassed by the praise. But Edward feigned disgruntlement. "My little winter jacket has sprung a leak," he added warmly. "We're both fortunate. I was blessed to marry your mother and have you and Sophia, and now you've started your own family with Kingsley." The unmentioned Damien Blackwood momentarily darkened with displeasure, though no one noticed. Aside from the unwelcome presence of Damien, the meal was enjoyable. Throughout the dinner, Alexander served Evelyn food repeatedly when the meal neared its end. Evelyn leaned close to Alexander's ear and whispered, "Thank you for marrying me." Alexander paused, glancing at her, his thin lips pressed together slightly, silent, unbothered. Evelyn offered him a radiant smile. In her 22 years of life through naive adolescence or university days, Evelyn had never planned for dating or marriage. Marriage should have been a consideration after turning 30. She never imagined marrying at 22, let alone falling for someone. Alexander's presence rendered Damien nearly invisible. After dinner, Damien claimed urgent business and left Evelyn, and Alexander remained until 8 o'clock before departing for the Kingsley residence, unbuckling her seatbelt. Evelyn exited the car and stretched her hand toward Alexander. Seeing her extended hand, Alexander hesitated for 2 seconds before clasping it, leading her into the main hall hand in hand. Evelyn suppressed a smile, her heart feeling impossibly sweet. Entering the hall, Margaret Thorne caught sight of their clasped hands and paused for a few stunned moments before discreetly withdrawing. She knew better than to linger where she wasn't needed. It was the least she owed her position. Upstairs, their rooms lay in opposite directions. An awkward tension hung in the air. Evelyn tucked her hair behind her ear nervously. "Well, I'll head back to my room now." She instantly regretted the words. What was she being modest for? Modesty couldn't feed her, nor help her hold on to Alexander Kingsley. Alexander replied without inflection. Evelyn desperately wanted to slap herself at that moment. Alexander remained stationary, clearly waiting for her to leave first. "I was just playing coy for a second." Evelyn gathered her courage, clutching the hem of his suit jacket and giving it a gentle tug. "I want to sleep in your room." Sleep with you? Was it really so hard to say? Why hadn't she just said this directly? This was truly what she wanted. Without initiative, there could be no story or, indeed, any accident. Seeing Alexander stay silent, she softened her voice, cautiously testing, "Can I gig, elder brother?" As the affectionate term left her lips. Evelyn shuddered at her own saccharine tone, but she endured it. They said men couldn't resist a sweet J. Evelyn's voice was already naturally soft. Purposefully affected, it became silky smooth. It sent an electric shiver through Alexander Kingsley's core. Looking into her hopeful eyes, he agreed, almost unwittingly at this moment, gazing at the softly appealing girl before him. He forgot their 1-year divorce pact. He had tried so hard to maintain distance, preparing to let her go and grant her freedom. Yet the moment she acted spoiled or fixed him with that pitiful gaze, all defenses crumbled. He could never harden his heart against her, not then, nor ever. Evelyn, fully prepared for rejection, was stunned when the J worked its unexpected magic. Overwhelmed with joy, she jumped lightly, twining her arms around Alexander's neck and her slender legs around his lean, powerful waist. "Gay, you're so wonderful," she murmured, this time in her natural voice. Little did she know this unfeigned murmur affected him far more deeply than any melodic cooing. It felt like a tender feather brushing his heart. Fearing she might fall, Alexander moved to support her legs, but Evelyn hopped down before he could reach them. A flicker of disappointment flashed through his inky black eyes. "Don't lock the door," Evelyn beamed. "I'm going to my room to grab some pajamas." In truth, this time, she wasn't worried he'd actually lock her out. Her mood soared as she skipped back toward her room, like a grade schooler heading home after school, humming an indistinct tune. Watching her cheerful retreat, a faint smile touched the corner of Alexander Kingsley's lips. She really seemed to have changed so much. He lingered only after she entered her room. Evelyn spent over 10 minutes in her room. She didn't just grab one set of pajamas, hauled several outfits back, not just sleepwear but also casual clothes. She made her first delivery to his room while he showered. Seizing the opportunity, she shuttled back and forth the toiletries, psychic products, and critical or essential perfumes. The duration of his shower became her moving marathon. She practically relocated her home furnishings too, though his substantial bedroom easily accommodated it all. Leaving ample space after more than a dozen round trips, her stamina gave out. Gasping slightly as she sank onto the edge of his bed, she realized her frail physique demanded attention. No regular exercise, constant chauffeursure, lack of strength was embarrassing. This little expedition was grimly eye-opening. At that precise moment she made a silent vow. Rise at 6 a.m. daily, clock 40 vigorous minutes on the treadmill. Otherwise, with her current chicken-legged stamina, Alexander could fly the coop and she'd never catch him. She sighed, silently collapsing onto the bed, as if training would make her elusive target easier to catch. She'd merely prolonged the struggle abruptly. She shot upright. Didn't Alexander work out religiously? Every dawn was this, an opportunity. Alexander emerged from the steamy confines of the shower and froze. Her garments dominated his bed. He was known for obsessiveness bordering on pathology, meticulously ordered sanctuary where sheets hosted pillows, a duvet in pristine emptiness. Fear of provoking dismay flashed through Evelyn. Alexander padded closer. Toweling damp locks, rivulets traced his tendon-ridged neck. When his throat worked, that slithering jump of cartilage was pure, leashed sensuality. Evelyn stared, openly entranced. Was this calculated seduction? Filthy fantasies almost materialized. She shook, her regurging purification needing dirt begonnen stuttering slightly. Showering time. And whisked past, I'll clean up straight after. Chapter 10. Can't you not abandon me? After saying this, Evelyn Sinclair randomly grabbed a set of pajamas and fled in a fluster, entering the bathroom and closing the door. When Evelyn Sinclair emerged from the bathroom, the bedroom she had left messy had been restored to tidy order. She blinked. My clothes. A sudden unpleasant thought struck her. Were they thrown out? Not merely thinking it, she opened the bedroom door to check outside, then sighed in relief. Closing the door, she turned and met Alexander Kingsley's puzzled gaze, momentarily at a loss for words. While she was still searching for a response, Alexander Kingsley spoke first. The pajamas are in the closet. The rest of your things are in the walk-in closet. Evelyn Sinclair Frozethis was his silent permission for her to sleep in his bedroom long-term. Thank you. This was good. Sleeping together made things easier. No, sleeping together helped deepen their relationship. She walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. You're not going to work again later, are you? She feared Alexander Kingsley would work in his study past midnight, like he did the previous night. No. Alexander Kingsley leaned lazily against the headboard, a faint weariness in his eyes from poor rest the night before. This time, Alexander Kingsley didn't turn his back to her as he had yesterday. They lay flat on the bed with a person-sized gap between them. The floor lamp was on Evelyn Sinclair's side. She spoke softly. Then I'll turn off the light. She glanced sideways at Alexander Kingsley. The warm light cast on his sharp profile softened its edges, adding a gentle touch. Evelyn Sinclair reached out and switched off the floor lamp, plunging the room into dimness where only the outline of his face was faintly visible. She remembered her main business then, turning to face Alexander Kingsley. Are you going to sleep now? Is something wrong? His tone was light, but deep-voiced in the dark. If you go to the gym tomorrow morning, could you wake me? She waited quietly for Alexander Kingsley's answer. She never made a habit of waking up at 6, even when sleepless. She stayed curled under the blanket scrolling on her phone until breakfast. For someone with severe laziness like her, daily early rising required immense willpower to even get out of bed. Fortunately, the gym was on the 3rd floor, and she didn't have to go, outside which made it slightly better. Alexander Kingsley. If you can get up, then yes, I can do it. Evelyn Sinclair. Remember to call me. Hoon. Alexander Kingsley. Sleep. Evelyn Sinclair obediently replied with a hoon. She wasn't sleepy at all, her eyes open as she stared at his vague outline and listened to his steady breathing. Evelyn Sinclair thought he must be asleep. Gently she inched closer to him. The scent of his shower gel washed over her, stirring a restless longing in her heart. How she wanted to hug him. Her hand hesitantly moved to wrap around his waist, but faltered. She didn't dare touch him. After several attempts, she gave up, afraid to wake him since he'd slept little the night before. As she withdrew her hand, her wrist was suddenly seized. Evelyn Sinclair's courage, never strong. She startled. The hand on her wrist pulled lightly, and she tumbled into Alexander Kingsley's embrace, his arm slipping under her neck. The hand that held her wrist left to encircle her slender waist, now facing her. Alexander Kingsley, who had been lying flat, was now mere inches away. Her head rested on his arm, their closeness so intimate she could hear his steady heartbeat. Alexander Kingsley's voice was low and magnetic. "Behave, go to sleep." In the darkness, Evelyn Sinclair blinked, realizing he wasn't asleep after all. Calling his name, "Alexander Kingsley." Good night." Evelyn Sinclair smiled secretly, her arm encircling his waist. This must be the safest, most reassuring position. So reassured that she soon fell sound asleep in Alexander Kingsley's arms. After only a short while, nightmares plagued her. Sweat glistened in fine beads on her forehead, her temples were damp, tears streaked, her small face twisted in anguish, her complexion deathly pale. In her dream, Alexander Kingsley hadn't died. He confronted her coldly, demanding, "Why didn't you believe me? Why did you kill me?" His dark eyes brimmed with disgust and deep hatred. He said that if there was a next life, he never wanted to meet her again. Without another glance, Alexander Kingsley turned and strode away, his back resolute and final. She wanted to cry out his name, to chase after him, but no sound emerged. Her feet felt like weights, unable to move, forcing her to watch helplessly as he left. After Alexander Kingsley vanished, she was trapped in absolute darkness, pitch black, no direction, not a sliver of light. No one could enter. She couldn't escape. Fear seized every nerve. She hunched down, shivering as she clutched herself. "Evelyn Sinclair, wake up." Alexander Kingsley noticed her distress, his brow furrowing slightly as he called softly, "Wake up." Evelyn Sinclair's brow was tightly knit, her hands gripping the covers, oblivious to any sound, mired in agony. She murmured incessantly, "Don't go, I'm scared. Alexander Kingsley, we're so dark here, don't leave me. Alexander Kingsley." Her voice turned choked. "Alexander Kingsley, it wasn't you who killed Mom, Dad, and my sister. I know that now. I really understand my mistake." Hearing these words, Alexander Kingsley's expression changed, his eyes clouded with unreadable emotion. Evelyn Sinclair's sobs turned into uncontrollable weeping, her apologies pouring out in continuous murmurs, snapping out of his thoughts. Alexander Kingsley grasped her shoulders, shaking her gently. "Wan, wake up. You're having a nightmare. I didn't leave. I haven't abandoned you. I'm right here with you." Evelyn Sinclair seemed to hear Alexander Kingsley calling her, but hadn't he already gone? He'd left her. He didn't want her anymore. He reached out tenderly, wiping tears from the corner of her eye. "Wan, open your eyes and see. I'm here." That was Alexander Kingsley's voice. She wasn't mistaken. Tearfully she asked, "If I open my eyes, will you not leave? Can't you not abandon me?" Evelyn Sinclair cried so hard her words broke apart. The tears at her eyes didn't stop. Her temple hair was soaked, and her pillow slick with tears. Alexander Kingsley paused, then held her close in his arms. "How could I bear to reject you when you're like this?" he sighed. "Stop crying, open your eyes and look at me, okay?" In the dream, the darkness dissipated. She stood and saw Alexander Kingsley in the distance, his hand extended to her. She smiled. Evelyn Sinclair slowly opened her eyes, meeting Alexander Kingsley's worried and affectionate gaze. Startled, she clung to him tightly. "Alexander Kingsley." Alexander Kingsley patted her back gently. I'm here." Soon her tears soaked the fabric over his chest. "I know I was wrong, truly." Alexander Kingsley gave a calm, Though awake from her dream, Evelyn Sinclair's mind was hazy-blurred. She couldn't tell if this moment was real or another dream. "I'm sorry." Evelyn Sinclair kept apologizing, wrapped in his hold, while Alexander Kingsley comforted her tenderly. Exhausted from crying, she fell asleep, this time dreamlessly and peacefully. Alexander Kingsley settled her comfortably, pulling the blankets over her. His fingertips smoothed the frown at her brow. After a moment of gazing softly down at her, he leaned over to turn off the floor lamp. Lying beside her, nuzzled against his chest in her sleep. Chapter 11. Stolen Kiss. 6 a.m. the next day. Alexander Kingsley looked at the person sleeping soundly on the bed. "Evelyn Sinclair, get up. Moo, get up." The person on the bed remained motionless, showing no reaction whatsoever. If it weren't for her insistence last night that he keep trying to wake her if she didn't stir, he would have left long ago. She knew herself well when it came to oversleeping. "Get up!" Alexander Kingsley raised his voice. The person on the bed stirred, turned over, and continued sleeping, mumbling, "Stop bothering me 5 more minutes." Alexander Kingsley. Mern by 6:20 a.m. Alexander Kingsley had lost all patience. He yanked off the quilt and hauled her up like a kitten. "Evelyn Sinclair, if you don't get up now, I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" Evelyn Sinclair mumbled drowsily. "To work." Alexander Kingsley. "But, Jim." "Oh, go ahead then," mid-sentence. Evelyn Sinclair's eyes snapped open. She was instantly wide awake. She had nearly missed this opportunity. "Give me 5 minutes." 5 minutes later, dressed in black athletic wear with her hair in a high ponytail, she stood before Alexander Kingsley with a bright smile. "Ready, the 3rd floor gym!" Within minutes, Evelyn Sinclair switched off the treadmill, slid to the floor, and gasped for air, waving at Alexander Kingsley. "Can't do it. My life's flashing before my eyes." Alexander Kingsley's gaze held pure disdain. Feeling slighted, Evelyn Sinclair pouted. "Stop looking at me like that." He averted his eyes. After catching her breath, she scrambled up, refusing to be humiliated, and stepped back onto the treadmill, inching the speed higher. Her determination to prove him wrong backfired spectacularly. Half an hour later, dizziness, spots dancing before her eyes, nausea, the urge to vomit. Alexander Kingsley carried her downstairs, where the family doctor soon appeared. After the examination, the doctor shook his head gravely. "You might think she was terminally ill. Mr. Kingsley, Mrs. Kingsley is fine. She's simply out of shape. These symptoms are normal after overexertion. Exercise more for better health. A stronger physique means fewer illnesses." Evelyn Sinclair. "But gee thanks," the doctor continued. "Dizziness should ease within 2 hours at best, but may linger for a full day." Evelyn Sinclair. "Book please, just leave." So humiliating proof that desperation to prove oneself can backfire. After the doctor left, Alexander Kingsley sat in the armchair beside the bed, studying her with an unreadable expression. Evelyn Sinclair. "But, do I have something on my face?" "No." He stood, grabbed clothes from the wardrobe, and walked into the bathroom. Evelyn Sinclair. "Bock." She yelled at the door. "Alexander Kingsley. What's that look supposed to mean, scorning me?" Her only answer was the rush of the shower. 15 minutes later he emerged, wearing a black minist tee and casual pants. His usual sharpness softened into languid grace. Evelyn Sinclair stared, mesmerized. What a walking clothes hanger. She preferred him like this, more approachable than in stiff suits. Then it hit her. No suit meant no plans to leave. Did that mean he'd stay home with her? Sticky with sweat, Evelyn Sinclair braved her lingering dizziness for a quick rinse. Alexander Kingsley remained alert outside, tracking every sound. Freshly showered, she crawled back into bed. Alexander Kingsley brought breakfast upstairs, but she managed only 2 spoonfuls of porridge. He lifted the bowl from the nightstand, scooping a portion to her lips. "Eat more." Suppressing a scream, she let him feed her. The first time he'd done this since her rebirth. He still loved her, cared for her. Right, ha ha. If he could read minds, he'd have heard her internal screeching. Despite her lack of appetite, his meticulous feeding ensured the entire bowl vanished. After he left with the bowl, Evelyn Sinclair remembered last night's dream, Alexander Kingsley's gentle reassurance echoing. He returned minutes later with warm water. "Drink this." "Hesitant?" she finally asked. "Last night, you had nightmares." So his comforting words were real, not part of her dream. Secretly delighted, she remained oblivious to the sleep-talking she'd also done. After basking in joy, she sighed. Was I a total embarrassment this morning? She'd expected sympathy. Instead, he mercilessly twisted the knife. Yes, embarrassing. His calm tone was a lethal blow. Evelyn Sinclair nearly needed a 3-day ICU stay. "Don't wake me tomorrow," she declared, utterly dejected. "My body rejects exercise. I'm built for lazing around." Alexander Kingsley remained silent, dark eyes glinting with suppressed amusement. Truthfully, While sports weren't her forte, at least inactivity didn't make her gain weight. Her lean frame was her sole consolation. By lunchtime, her dizziness had vanished. Fearing he'd leave if she recovered, she kept up the act. She thought she'd fooled him. Little did she know she was the fool. Alexander Kingsley saw through her charade, but played along, spending the afternoon watching TV with her, curled on the sofa clutching a pillow. Evelyn Sinclair watched a rom-com's climactic kissing scene. Her gaze drifted to Alexander Kingsley, feigning sleep beside her, lingering on his lips. Temptation stirred. She shifted sideways, eyes closed, leaning in just at 1 centimeter away when the phone on the coffee table rang. Cursing inwardly, she opened her eyes to meet his penetrating stare. The air froze thick with awkwardness. "What were you doing?" Evelyn Sinclair, but forcing nonchalance, she studied his lashes. "Your eyelashes are so long." She snapped upright, avoiding his eyes any longer, and she'd crack. Grabbing the phone, she hung up without checking the caller. On screen, the actors kissed fervently from doorway to living room. Evelyn Sinclair cringed hard enough to dig through the floor. Just as they pulled apart and relief washed over her, they locked lips again and tumbled onto a bed. If only she hadn't hung up in frustration, that call might have spared her this agony. Stealing a glance, she found him watching too, as if hearing her plea. The phone rang again. Evelyn Sinclair mentally sent her gratitude. Chapter 12. "Won't you hold me tonight?" Evelyn Sinclair answered the phone. It was her best friend, Chloe Beaumont, calling. As soon as it connected, Chloe Beaumont's accusatory voice came through. "Why did you hang up on me? You better give me a reasonable explanation." Evelyn Sinclair. "Chloe Beaumont, are you asking for trouble? How dare you speak to your big sister like that?" The reason that Evelyn Sinclair used Chloe's full name was because she noticed Alexander Kingsley's subtle expression shift when she answered. Alexander knew Chloe, and his demeanor visibly softened when he heard the name, Chloe Beaumont. "Enough chit-chat, North Alley Bar. Coming or not?" "Not going." Evelyn tilted her head slightly toward Alexander Kingsley. "Staying home with my husband on Sunday. We'll talk tomorrow." Alexander Kingsley's fingers twitched as he turned to her, his gaze turning intense. Hearing her call him husband, the line went silent for seconds before Chloe responded, static crackling. "That husband can't be Alexander Kingsley, right?" Evelyn wasn't surprised by the question. Chloe knew about their former discord and believed he'd orchestrated the Sterling family's internal turmoil. Receiving no immediate reply, Chloe gasped. As the TV's love scene faded, Evelyn tossed aside her pillow. "Cheating? Don't be ridiculous." She sipped water calmly. "I'm home with Alexander Kingsley, Miss Chloe Beaumont. All your questions will be answered tomorrow." After hanging up, she imagined Chloe's bewildered expression. Feeling an intense gaze, Evelyn turned and locked eyes with Alexander Kingsley. His scorching stare overwhelmed her within seconds. Looking away with an awkward cough, she confessed bluntly, "Fine. I was going to steal a kiss." Without waiting for a response, she focused back on the drama. Seconds later, Alexander Kingsley stated, coolly. Evelyn Sinclair, bought feigning nonchalance, she nodded. "Good that you know." Only she felt her pounding heart as she stared at the screen, unable to suppress a smile. How could 3 ordinary words from this man unravel her composure so completely in her past life? Evelyn prided herself on ironclad self-control. No one had breached her defenses until Alexander Kingsley gradually claimed her heart without warning, their bond embedding itself in her bones before she realized she planned to turn herself in and die in prison until discovering the real killer with Damian Blackwood. Learning the truth, she resolved on 2 things: avenging her murdered parents and Sophia Ashford by killing Damian, then joining Alexander Kingsley in death to atone. Her past trust in Damian Blackwood now burned as hatred. She cursed her own blindness, unable to distinguish human from beast in those around her. Her thoughts drifted to Alexander Kingsley's chiseled profile. If he knew her past life betrayals, she thought, his hatred would be bone deep. Evelyn avoided the kitchen whenever Alexander was home. After dinner, he retreated to his study while she lingered in the living room before returning to his bedroom. His silent permission was clear. Her sleepwear now filled his closet and drawers. Post-shower, she streamed romantic dramas until drowsiness crept in. Alexander hadn't returned. She plugged in her tablet, set it on the nightstand, and padded to the study. Hearing his voice through the door, likely on a call or video conference, her knuckles hovered mid-knock. Monitor Damien Blackwood. Report immediately if he makes any move. Alexander's icy command sliced through the silence. After prolonged quiet suggesting the call had ended, she knocked lightly. The door opened instantly, revealing him. Evelyn smiled. Finished working? Tired? Recognizing her tiredness, he said simply, "Time for bed." Satisfied, she led him back by hand after lights out. Evelyn initially stayed on her side before inching toward him. Alexander felt every shift. His cool voice cut the darkness, weighty with authority. "Sleep properly." Evelyn complained. "You held me last night. Won't you tonight?" "But I want you to," she insisted, her voice thick with audible pout, even unseen. Alexander sighed. "Come here." Instantly brightening in the shadows, Evelyn flung herself against him, arms encircling his waist, head pillowed on his arm. Where security once meant family proximity, phone batteries, bank balances, and warm quilts now, Alexander Kingsley's embrace offered the deepest peace. Emboldened, she pushed further. "Can you call me for breakfast tomorrow?" "Not Margaret Thorne." "Fine," came his immediate reply, faster than expected. "Remember then," she warned, "skip the 6 a.m. wake-up. I won't embarrass myself being hopeless at workouts again." Taking his silence as agreement, she wished him good night and fell into deep sleep. 6 a.m. next day cold-pulled Evelyn from dreams. Frowning in sleep, she groped blindly for vanished blankets before curling into a ball, eyes shut. "Evelyn Sinclair, wake up!" She stretched languidly. "What's breakfast? I want a hot dog." Alexander loomed over her, brow furrowed. "No breakfast if you don't rise now." "Alexander Kingsley, you're harsh," she grumbled, blinking groggily. "What time is it?" 6:10. "Ah," she whined, "I said I wasn't exercising today. Why wake me?" Impatient with her dallying, he hauled her upright decisively. "This isn't negotiable." Chapter 13. "Listen, I say thank you." Evelyn Sinclair had severe morning irritability. If anyone else had been standing there, she would have exploded, unleashing a torrent of curses followed by physical expulsion. Looking utterly drained, she was hauled up like a chick by Alexander Kingsley. "Alexander, what are you doing?" Her tone held no annoyance or anger, only soft, sugary sweetness that bordered on coquettish to a keen ear. It even carried a hint of affection for Alexander Kingsley. Exercise. Her fragile physique would truly deteriorate without training. Now was the time to act before it was too late. "I don't want." Before Evelyn could finish, a frosty glare from him silenced her instantly. Alexander declared, "Vegetables only for all 3 meals." Evelyn, but he was dead set on making her exercise. As Alexander turned to leave, Evelyn shut her eyes and steeled herself. "I'll go," reframing it as his concern for her health made the idea almost acceptable, even mildly pleasing. Alexander adjusted the treadmill speed. After 5 minutes of brisk walking and 10 of power walking, Evelyn panted lightly, tolerable, wiping her forehead with a towel. She pleaded, "I need a break. 10 more minutes." Alexander increased the pace to a jog. Evelyn fought back tears. At 22, a college graduate being forced to exercise felt humiliating. Yet she couldn't bring herself to scold, hit, or even raise her voice at him. Resigned, she ran on tearfully. "Why, aren't you running?" she asked between strides. "Supervising you." Watching Alexander, she remembered her college gym teacher, though he was far handsomer. Had he been her instructor, she doubted her 800-meter dash would have taken over 8 minutes. The final meters she'd crawled. Normally image-conscious, she'd collapsed at the finish line that day, fainting into the infirmary unbeknownst to her. Alexander had witnessed it all, and carried her there himself. He knew wealthy girls were often pampered, but Evelyn's fragility still stunned him. After 10 minutes, Evelyn tried to dismount. Alexander stopped her, slowing the pace. "Walk it off for a minute." She sighed deeply. After 10 minutes, what was 60 seconds done, she flopped starfish style onto a yoga mat. Only exhaustion remained, nothing like yesterday's agony. Professor Kingsley, we can skip tomorrow, right? Maintain this routine for a week. A faint smile touched his lips at her martyred expression. Evelyn. But, Professor, I'd like to sing for you. Standing. She bowed rhythmically with each line. Listen, I say thank you. Because of you, all seasons feel warm. Her high ponytail swung with each dip. Finishing, she formed a heart overhead, her smile more pained than joyful. Alexander. But she expected consolation, at least justification about her health. Instead, he regarded her solemnly. You're welcome. Evelyn nearly perished on the spot. Keep striving tomorrow, Evelyn, Alexander said before departing. Evelyn, he called her Evelyn. She hadn't misheard. A grin split her face. Who cared about running? He'd called her Evelyn. I'll do my best, Professor, she shouted after him. At breakfast, Evelyn savored her hard-won hot dog. After Alexander left for work, her driver took her to meet Chloe Beaumont at a cafe. Evelyn spotted her through the window. Chloe Beaumont, her faux sister, despite her cutesy name. Chloe radiated fierce magnetism, unforgettable at first glance. Sliding opposite her, Evelyn grinned. Hey, gorgeous, can I get your number? Chloe flicked her hair, chin propped on her hand. Absolutely. I've a soft spot for beauty, so genders welcome. Chloe Beaumont, youngest scion of Kyoto's affluent Beaumonts, was notoriously willful and disdainful. 24 to Evelyn's 22. She earned the title sister only when favors were needed. Her romantic conquests, it was said, could form a queue stretching to the city outskirts. She played the field without ever losing her heart, though none guessed the player would soon be played by a man both women knew in passing. What freed up your schedule? Evelyn asked. Dumped another? Chloe smiled. They're nothing compared to you. You should rein it in, Evelyn cautioned, chuckling. Karma's real. But she felt no real concern, knowing the outcome was ultimately positive. Nonsense, Chloe eyed her. Says the girl tormenting her hubby? No room to talk. Evelyn stared into her coffee cup. Her retribution had already arrived. I did torment him. Now I just want to cherish him. What happened to Alexander ruined your family. Chloe stirred her drink. Giving him a pass just like that, unthinkable to her cursed affection, held no appeal. Not him, Evelyn corrected. Alexander didn't sabotage Sterling Group. I was wrong about him. Chloe stayed uncharacteristically neutral. Poor guy. Since it was a misunderstanding, treat him well. I will. Then who caused it? Chloe pressed. I know who. Hatred flashed in Evelyn's eyes. But I'm still gathering proof. Need help? I've got this, Evelyn insisted. She sipped her coffee, grimacing. Bitter? Chloe dropped in 2 sugar cubes. Here, Chloe gets me. Ugh, nicknames. Chloe wrinkled her nose. So saccharine. Understood, Miss Chloe Beaumont. Chapter 14. Behave and Sleep. After chatting for a while, Chloe Beaumont received a call and prepared to leave. Got something to handle. Dinner's on me next time. Without being told, Evelyn Sinclair knew where she was headed and reminded her, Don't say I didn't warn you to tone it down. Chloe Beaumont lifted her chin, eyes slanting upward. The word restraint doesn't exist in this lady's dictionary. Evelyn Sinclair shook her head, fearing reality would prove her wrong too soon. After Chloe left, Evelyn Sinclair exited the cafe. The sunlight glared harshly as she looked up before getting in her car and dialing a contact. Investigate someone. The call ended in under a minute. Evelyn Sinclair glanced at the driver. To Gearan Mall. Gearan Mall stood downtown, nicknamed the Luxury Emporium. Evelyn Sinclair shopped for 2 hours, emerging with arms laden with brown paper bags from various luxury brands. The driver took them from her, Capital University, at the mall. She'd spotted a limited edition figurine Sophia Ashford had coveted for months, originally planning to gift it later, but knowing Sophia wouldn't return home for nearly a month, she decided to deliver it directed. Sophie would surely weep with gratitude. Curling her lips, Evelyn met Sophia Ashford just as expected, eyes brimming with joy. Sophia rushed over. Evelyn treated her to lunch nearby, then transferred spending money before leaving. As she departed, Sophia shouted from behind, "Evelyn Sinclair, you're the world's greatest sister. I love you." The outburst drew stares from nearby students. Sophia remained unfazed, while Evelyn covered her face, slid into the car, and urged the driver to leave immediately. Mortifying despite their one-year age gap, Sophia's childishness made Evelyn feel they were a decade apart. Utterly juvenile, Sophia Ashford was truly the epitome of a comedy queen, besides Sophia's figurine. Evelyn had bought gifts for Alexander Kingsley: ties, tie clips, a suit, and 2 sets of loungewear needs. At dinner that evening, Alexander Kingsley's lips curved softly at 2 familiar dishes on the table. He ate little else. Evelyn Sinclair feigned nonchalance, but secretly thrilled. She did have culinary talent after all. Never had she imagined willingly cooking for a man after digesting her meal. She entered the bathroom and studied her reflection. Troubled Alexander Kingsley had warmed to her lately, yet their relationship seemed frozen beyond bedtime embraces. Should she force the issue? Alexander Kingsley could lift her like a feather string. Disparity assured failure. He might even punch her for assault. While other couples basked in marital bliss, she remained stuck, pursuing her husband. Heaven's cruelties were forgivable. Self-inflicted torments were not. This was retribution, since force wouldn't work. She opted for sartorial strategy, leaving the rest to Alexander Kingsley's self-control. Tonight, the nightgown averse Evelyn deliberately chose a sleek black silk, slit slightly provocative. She spritzed perfume, letting the dress showcase her curves, long legs, flawless skin, and delicate collarbones. Hair cascading over her shoulders, she appraised herself in the mirror. Alexander Kingsley lounged against the headboard. His gaze lingered impassively when she emerged before shifting away. Disappointed Evelyn nearly missed the fleeting awe in his dark eyes. Sitting beside him, she leaned close, hair brushing his arm. "My new limited edition perfume. Do you like it?" Her smile radiated artless innocences of merely inquiring about fragrance. The low neckline hinted at soft curves. Alexander Kingsley's throat moved as he edged back. "It's nice." Eyes averted, tension tightening his jaw. He rose. "Shower." He vanished into the bathroom before she processed his words. But he'd showered earlier tonight. He'd washed first, then, her tiptoeing to the door, she pressed her ear against it. Only running water, 2 showers in an hour. Absurd. Evelyn returned to bed sulking. Was he repulsed? Impossible. He wouldn't share her bed or hold her unless his control frayed, hence the cold shower. A revelation struck to confirm. She watched him exit the bathroom, gave a pointed look, then entered. Turning on the shower, she tested the water's temperature. Her hypothesis proved correct. Icy water, no lingering steam, back in bed. She eyed Alexander Kingsley, then straddled him arms, looping his neck, smile, teasing, frowning. He grasped her wrists to push her off. She clung stubbornly, forcing her away, wrist hurting her. So he relented. "Get off," he ordered coldly. "No. Why the cold shower? It's hot." Unconvinced. The room was climate-controlled, and he'd just bathed, that she countered. "Alexander Kingsley, we're legally married. You shouldn't suppress certain needs. I'll help." Her angelic expression belied her words. "Suppressing urges and cold showers harm your health." "Alexander." Evelyn blinked guilelessly. "So no more showers. You understand, right?" Could he really misinterpret such blatancy? McKylan stretched. Had he grasped it? Her phrasing couldn't be clearer. Impossible otherwise. "Did you understand?" she pressed. Her fragrance enveloped him as she leaned close, oblivious to her effect. His brow furrowed minutely, darkness veiling repressed desire. Alexander Kingsley's lips parted softly. "Behave and sleep." Her spirits crashed. He wasn't oblivious, feigned ignorance to reject her. Sliding off him, she muttered bitterly, "I'm your lawful wife, not some stranger." He knew. Had circumstances differed, he'd have pinned her down without hesitation, but not yet was she still flight. Risk once, he planned to set her free. End of chapter 15. I forgive you, Evelyn, Sinclair only murmured resentfully before dropping the subject, unable to sustain any anger toward him. She had intended to take things slow, content just to remain by his side. Yet human nature is greedy, especially when tasting sweetness from someone beloved. One always craves more. Nestled in Alexander Kingsley's arms, she whispered, "Alexander Kingsley, you might doubt this, but I must tell you, from start to end, it's you I've loved. I'll treat you better now, and won't quarrel with you anymore." She paused, then added, "You must have been so hurt and angry back then. I'm sorry I was wrong." Alexander Kingsley enveloped her hand in his palm. "Why say this suddenly? Affection must be spoken aloud," Evelyn Sinclair replied. "And I owe you an apology I should have given long ago." Lifting her gaze to his, she continued, "I know no apology guarantees forgiveness, so don't feel pressured. I'm simply doing what's right." Alexander Kingsley stroked her hair tenderly, leaned close, and brushed a feather-like kiss against the corner of her lips before withdrawing. No matter their history or her past action, Shishi's anger was real, yet he couldn't sustain it when she softened toward him. Especially now, Evelyn Sinclair stared, speechless, fingertips lingering where his lips had touched, still warm. Time to sleep." "Okay." She burrowed obediently into his embrace, heart sweetened by the kiss, yet oblivious to its meaning. "I forgive you." Nightmares ceased over the following days. Perhaps she was adapting to Rebirth, or his presence eased her fears rooted solely in losing him again. Having endured that agony once, she vowed never to relive it. At 6:10 a.m., Alexander Kingsley called her repeatedly. The figure in bed merely turned over, eyes shut. He stared down for seconds before yanking the quilt off, then froze and hastily recovered her. Evelyn Sinclair's nightgown had ridden up to her abdomen. "Evelyn Sinclair, get up!" Alexander Kingsley's jaw tightened. He cocooned her in the quilt and hauled her upright. Still drowsy, she refused to open her eyes. "Mr. Kingsley, spare the child, please. She has zero athletic talent. Want to eat only greens 3 meals a day? No. 5 minutes. Get up unless you do." Evelyn Sinclair. Day 2 of forced exercise. The child longed to flee home to mommy. Today's run felt less grueling. Now, gasping, exhaustion. Post-breakfast, Alexander Kingsley left for work, while Evelyn Sinclair visited Eleanor Whitaker to learn pan-seared steak. Eager to cook for him, she rushed to the Kingsley kitchen afterward without her mother's guidance. Her movements were clumsier, yet the result looked impressive. Evelyn Sinclair possessed culinary talent within days. She mastered Eleanor Whitaker's recipes. Alexander Kingsley recognized her handiwork instantly but never exposed her, only repeatedly instructing Margaret Thorne to supervise her cooking. Despite daily 6 a.m. drags from bed, she gradually adapted, waking punctually, her body revitalized, mood and sleep quality transformed. One morning, after Alexander Kingsley departed, Evelyn Sinclair received a call. That person was located. She arranged a meeting that afternoon. Sans driver, she entered a cafe. In the corner sat the man. She recalled speaking with Damian Blackwood before her rebirth, the same man she'd glimpsed exiting Damian Blackwood's office. Evelyn Sinclair's lips curved coldly. He played no small part in the Sterling family's downfall. Seated opposite him, she stated bluntly, "Lee Choyang, dirty, son-in-law of Kyoto Zal family, funded entirely by them 2 years ago. You cheated and fathered a 1-year-old son in Jiangchun." Lee Choyang gaped. "How?" His affair was meticulously concealed. Exposure meant penniless exile from the Zal fortune. Evelyn Sinclair smiled icily. "I know far more than you think." Lee Choyang had cheated repeatedly, nor was his wife Zhao Yang. Innocency parted harder, secure as a Zhao heir. But Lee Choyang owed everything to them. He possessed no real value. Zhao Yang kept him only because he resembled her late ex-boyfriend. Sweat beaded on Lee Choyang's forehead as he clutched his clothes. Zhao Yang had warned, "Betray her and he'd die." "Miss Sterling, what do you want?" Having dealt with Damian Blackwood, he recognized her. Evelyn Sinclair's gaze pinned him. "Mr. Lee, Are you aware the sterling funds were embezzled and company secrets leaked? Trembling, he wiped his brow. I don't know, since you don't, she replied smoothly. I'll bring your son back to acknowledge his ancestry. A biological child can't wander homeless forever, agree. Li Shuoyang paled, fidgeting. If they returned, he'd lose everything. Zhao's patriarch would slaughter him for betraying his daughter. Panicked, he plotted to relocate them. But Evelyn Sinclair preempted him. Relax, they're somewhere safe, pampered and well-fed. Miss Sterling, what are you after? Li Shuoyang snapped. He cared nothing for his mistresses, even the mother of his child. But the boy mattered. Was Damien Blackwood responsible for ruining the Sterlings? She demanded. When he stayed silent, her patience vanished. Refuse to answer, and I won't hesitate to target a child. Chapter 16. A day off for Evelyn. Li Shuoyang couldn't understand why Damien Blackwood had failed to uncover his secrets after exhaustive attempts, yet she had effortlessly caught him red-handed and was now using it to threaten him. Damien Blackwood needed his assistance and extended an olive branch, promising to help him overthrow Patriarch Zol once he secured the position of president at Sterling Group, freeing him from fear of the Zol family's influence. Li believed him not in Damien himself, but in the Sterling family's power in the capital. Were it not for betrayal by someone he trusted most, Sterling Group would not have faced such upheaval. Li Shuoyang stopped struggling. It was Damien Blackwood. He has an overseas company, where all the embezzled funds are stored, Li continued. He passed me confidential company documents during a project's negotiation and instructed me to leak them. Evelyn Sinclair asked, why didn't he do it himself? If anything went wrong, it would raise suspicion. By handing me the documents during a project discussion, even an investigation wouldn't point to him. Such cunning tactics she'd never realized. Her dear brother could be so calculating. Evelyn pressed, what are his next plans? Li replied, I only know he has a major scheme brewing. Beyond that, I'm unaware. Damien doesn't fully trust me. I need evidence, Evelyn stated. You have 1 week. I suspect you understand better than most that Damien even plotted against the family that raised him for 20 years. You're merely a pawn. Your downfall will likely be worse. She paused, adding, for this week, your son will be well cared for. If I lack evidence in 7 days, I'll bring him home to acknowledge his lineage. She left immediately. Within a week, she would obtain proof. If she exposed Damien's embezzlement of nearly 100 billion euros, he'd face imprisonment preventing the Sterling family's catastrophic fire scheduled for next year. A prison sentence was too lenient. He deserved worse, but for now securing her family's safety came first. With Damien locked away sooner, she could breathe easier. Li Shuoyang's cooperation would ensure Damien's downfall swiftly. At Kingsley Corporation headquarters, Harrison Reed informed Alexander Kingsley, Sir, Mrs. Kingsley contacted Li Shuoyang today. Alexander halted mid-nature. Acknowledge, ensure her security detail is reinforced. After Harrison departed, exhaustion surfaced in Alexander's gaze. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes to massage his temples. Moments later, he rose and stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, expression inscrutable. Evelyn had just returned home when her mother-in-law's video call arrived. She hesitated. Their last conversation felt like a lifetime ago. Smoothing her hair, she answered to reveal a woman with flawless makeup who appeared no older than 30, defying her nearly 50 years. Evelyn smiled sweetly. Hi, Mom. Alexander's mother beamed at her spirited daughter-in-law. Darling, how are you? Has Alexander been treating you well? He'd never hurt me, Evelyn replied. In truth, she recognized she'd always been the one mistreating him. Don't worry, Mom, she redirected. How are you and Dad? We're wonderful, came the reply. Their chat meandered through family news until Evelyn learned of her mother-in-law's imminent return. Joy surged through her. This ally could bridge the distance between her and Alexander. Tell me your arrival time. I'll meet you at the airport, they concluded. After Alexander's mother probed about grandchildren questions, Evelyn deftly dodged, mistaking her evasion for newlywed shyness. The call ended. Alone, Evelyn sighed. Without intimacy, children were impossible. Alexander showed no such inclination. But her mother-in-law's return might change everything. Unlike her own mother, who endlessly praised Alexander's brilliance while ignoring her marital strugglist as maternal figure, understood the unspoken. Alexander's ability to conceal their strained relationship meant few dared question their dynamic. Why had she ever believed those who sowed doubt against him? Without her second chance at life, she'd have kept trusting Damien before seeing his true nature. She viewed him as a beacon, gentle, humble, and devoted. Throughout childhood, he shielded her from consequences, molding her willfulness. Had he harbored no darkness, he'd have been the perfect brother. Their family might have remained whole. Dawn broke, with Alexander departing for a hiking business trip. His earliest return tomorrow morning, dread hollowed Evelyn's stomach. She scarcely touched breakfast. By evening, the mansion's echoing silence would return. Nights without him terrified her at the doorway. Harrison waited, while Evelyn clutched Alexander's sleeve. He clasped her hand, thumb stroking her knuckles. "Back tomorrow," she murmured agreement, eyes downcast. "Be safe. Message me when you land." Alexander embraced her. "Sleep late tomorrow, consider it a holiday." Evelyn wished for no such reprieve. Rising on her toes, she kissed his cheek. "Go safely." One lingering gaze later, she turned inside, afraid. Lingering might unleash desperate pleas for him to stay. From her balcony, she watched his car vanish. She lingered until the chill seeped in, then retreated indoors. Hours later, curled in bed amidst drama episodes, her phone chirped Alexander's unique ringtone. Her eyes brightened instantly after the 2.5-hour flight. His first act was contacting her. Lunchtime at home, noon in Haiching. "Eat immediately," she urged, before ending the call to free his schedule. Chapter 17. Haunted by nightmares, Alexander, Kingsley skipped lunch and went straight to the hotel. After resting for half an hour, he asked Harrison Reed to reschedule his 2 p.m. meeting an hour earlier. He compressed the 3-hour meeting into half the time, then immediately moved to handle other matters without resting. Evelyn Sinclair, unwilling to stay home alone, asked Chloe Beaumont to take her out. Chloe brought her to a bar. Evelyn sighed, realizing Chloe's only entertainment venue seemed to be nightclubs. Still drinking might help her sleep soundly later without fear, and perhaps she'd open her eyes to see Alexander back home. The bar pulsed with deafening music and kaleidoscopic lights. Groups mingled amid the haze of alcohol, sporadic crude remarks cutting through the decadent atmosphere. Chloe guided Evelyn to a quieter corner. Sipping her cocktail, Chloe shook her head. "Really? Evelyn, Alexander is just on a business trip returning tomorrow. Must you mope like this? A playgirl like you wouldn't understand." Evelyn took a drink, adding pointedly, "Though that might change. I'd love to see the day Miss Chloe Beaumont falls for someone." Chloe scoffed. "Prepare to be disappointed then. That person hasn't even been born yet." Born into privilege, cherished by all, she'd seen every type of man. None moved her heart, especially not those pursuing her family's influence. Soon, several men approached. Evelyn glanced at one, raising his glass toward her, and lifted her left hand, the diamond band glinting. "I'm married." The man left politely. Chloe similarly deflected others. "Miss Evelyn?" A familiar voice sounded beside them. Isabella Van Doren stood holding a glass, smiling. By day, Isabella appeared fragile and delicate, but now draped in a burgundy slit dress with smoky makeup, radiated sensual confidence. Evelyn momentarily forgot their rivalry, staring until Chloe nudged her. "Miss Isabella, what brings you here?" Isabella's smile turned provocative. "Nothing much. Did you come because Alexander Kingsley is away?" The insinuation that Isabella knew Alexander's schedule was clear. Suppressing her anger, Evelyn swirled her glass before countering lightly. "Alexander once said you were unattractive. I thought him blind." "You're quite striking, though still beneath me." His comment was uncalled for. Unlike the scripted reactions of typical antagonists, Isabella remained unruffled. "True, I pale next to you, Miss Evelyn, but I'm more than adequate to stay by Alexander's side. Goodbye." She walked off, leaving Evelyn fuming. "That schemer's skill level is beyond what I imagined," Evelyn growled, gulping her drink. "A love rival?" Chloe asked. Evelyn nodded bitterly. "Unbelievably, I dug this grave myself. What idiocy possessed me?" "Are you sure she's a rival?" Chloe pressed. "Absolutely. Did you hear those sickening Alexander brother refrains?" The encounter worsened Evelyn's mood. She downed several glasses to quell her agitation. "I doubt it," Chloe mused. She showed no possessiveness toward Alexander or malice toward you. Rivals spark hostility. She seemed purely intent on annoying you. Evelyn frowned. Why would she do that? Well, you annoyed her too. Consider it, even stop brooding. Evelyn shot her a betrayed glare. Whose side are you on? Yours. Want me to throttle that schemer? Chloe teased, rising. Save the act, faux friend, Evelyn grumbled. If Isabella wasn't after Alexander, she'd tolerate her. Leaving the bar drunk, Evelyn was escorted home by Chloe. She arrived at the Kingsley residence by 7, skipped dinner, and headed straight to shower. The hot water eased her inebriation. Wrapped in pajamas, she called Alexander from bed. His phone was off, likely drained during meetings. A hollow ache spread through her. Half an hour later, drowsy but anxious, she redealed, still off. Setting her ringer to maximum volume, she finally slept, fearing she might miss his callback. Rest evaded her. Nightmares took hold, endless darkness, where a voice hissed ceaselessly. Alexander left you. He abandoned you. Crouching, Ewan clutched her head, chanting, "He wouldn't. He didn't. You're lying." Her scream shattered the void. HEWOULD&ABANDONME. The voice vanished. The darkness dissolved into the Kingsley mansion. Inside, a funeral was underway. Chapter 18. She challenged me. How could this be? Was someone in trouble? Her hands clenched tightly, nails digging deep into her palms as she stepped inside. It was Alexander Kingsley's funeral. Her greatest fear and dread, Evelyn Sinclair collapsed to the ground, staring in disbelief at the scene before her. Hadn't she been reborn? Alexander Kingsley had been right beside her all along, so how could... That voice spoke again, telling her she hadn't been reborn at all, that Alexander Kingsley was dead, killed by her own hands, gone forever. The tenderness of the past few days had been nothing but a dream, all a lie. This was the reality now. Blinded by tears, Evelyn couldn't distinguish truth from illusion. She couldn't find her way home, forgetting that she had no home left, not her own, nor the one Alexander Kingsley had given her. Both were lost to her. Tears and sweat soaked her pillow as she remained trapped in the nightmare, unable to wake in her haze. She caught the familiar scent of sandalwood. A gentle kiss brushed her lips, soft and reassuring, bringing her comfort, muddled and half asleep. A tender voice whispered, "Why are you crying like this? It was just a dream, not real. I'm here." In her sleep, Evelyn kept calling Alexander Kingsley's name, as if saying it endlessly would keep him by her side forever. Hearing that familiar voice, her heart finally settled. She opened her eyes, lashes damp, and saw Alexander Kingsley's face close to hers, his brow slightly furrowed with concern. The warmth of his lips still lingered on hers. Evelyn froze. "Alexander Kingsley, I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." She wasn't sure if this was still a dream, but he felt overwhelmingly real, yet she feared he might vanish in the next instant. Subtly pinching her thigh, she winced in pain. He was truly here, overwhelmed by emotion, her delicate brows knit together, eyes brimming with tears, lips pressed tightly and downturned. She looked utterly pitiful and heartbroken. Alexander Kingsley had been uneasy about her. After arriving in Haiching, he couldn't stop thinking of that night when she'd suffered nightmares, weeping uncontrollably while calling his name. He'd rushed back immediately after finishing his meeting and handling urgent matters when he saw her missed call after landing. He considered phoning back but held off, worried she might be asleep. Gently wiping the tears from her eyes, he murmured in a low, weary voice, "I've got someone at home who keeps me on my toes. Finished what I needed to do, so I came back." He'd just arrived, not even changing out of his clothes, when Evelyn threw herself into his arms, clinging tightly to his waist. "I had a nightmare," she said, her voice thick and nasal from crying. "Hold me, please. Tighter. I'm scared." Alexander Kingsley looked down, tightening his embrace and soothing her back with soft, comforting words as her heart slowly calmed. Evelyn nestled in his warmth for a moment. The late hour made her sentimental. "Alexander Kingsley," she whispered, "do you still love me?" Though she pretended indifference in daily life, it wasn't true. She cared deeply. Ever since he'd handed her the divorce papers, doubt had gnawed at her. She feared his care came only from duty as a husband. Worse, she dreaded that he might insist on divorce after a year, granting her this time merely out of obligation to their marriage, Her daily terror was losing him, especially when alone with her thoughts. Alexander Kingsley's lips thinned as he stayed silent, not getting a response. She didn't press further. Pulling back, she noticed the exhaustion in his eyes. "You must be tired after all that travel," she said. Evelyn slipped out of bed and into slippers. Rest for a bit, heading into the bathroom. She ran a bath, adjusting the water temperature. She fetched pajamas from the closet, placing them on the rack beside the tub, and lit some scented candles. Once everything was ready, she stood before Alexander Kingsley, loosening his tie and removing his suit jacket. Shedding her usual pampered heiress demeanor, she became a tender, devoted wife. Alexander Kingsley's gaze softened, stirred deep inside. Evelyn gave him a small smile. "Go on," she urged, with a quiet mem. He entered the bathroom. Evelyn hung his suit on a hanger. Not getting the answer she sought left her feeling hollow. Though she consoled herself, there was still a year left on their agreement. An hour later, nestled against him, Evelyn hesitated, almost asking if he'd rushed back from Haiching because he worried about her. She opened her mouth, lingering indecisively, but swallowed the words. "Had some wine?" Alexander Kingsley's low voice cut through the quiet after minutes of holding her in silence. Evelyn didn't deny it. Yes, a little, not much. In her past life, he'd never restricted her drinking as long as she didn't overdo it or ruin her health. He'd let it go, with Alexander Kingsley. She'd always been free. She'd never listened to him, refusing to play nice, making him miserable was her specialty. Looking back, she knew she'd acted so selfishly only because he'd indulged her. Alexander Kingsley could easily have forced her into submission, but he wouldn't. He'd chosen his own unhappiness over harming her. "I saw Isabella Van Doren today," she murmured. Alexander Kingsley just watched her, waiting. Claire tilted her chin slightly. "She tried to provoke me, but I didn't let her win." A barely there smile touched Alexander Kingsley's lips. Evelyn caught it. She pouted at him with playful offense. "Aren't you worried your wife might get bullied by that admirer of yours?" Truthfully, Alexander Kingsley had no doubt, while Isabella Van Doren had her limits. Evelyn was a feisty little kitten, never one to take anything lying down. Remembering Chloe Beaumont's words, Evelyn blinked at Alexander Kingsley. "Alexander Kingsley, is Isabella Van Doren really your admirer?" "What makes you ask?" he replied. "Never mind," Evelyn sighed. Was the woman a rival? Didn't matter a woman showing Alexander Kingsley favor she'd treat as a threat? Her slender finger tapped his chest teasingly. "Mr. Kingsley, you're a married man. Keep yourself above reproach, stay away from girls like that, okay?" The words slipped out, but a shadow flicked in Evelyn's eyes. After all, she was the one who'd hurt him the most. Alexander Kingsley caught her restless hand, his tone affectionate, beneath the exhaustion. "Okay." Her eyes brightened. "My repayment. Tomorrow I swear I'll wake up at 6, no dragging me out of bed." He smoothed her hair. "Sleep now." Evelyn pulled away slightly to lean closer, pressing a soft kiss to his mouth. She wanted to linger. She stopped herself, afraid he'd push her away. "Good night, Mr. Kingsley," she whispered, turning away and closing her eyes. But seconds later, warmth touched her brow, a kiss lingering for just 2 beats before vanishing. Then she heard his deep voice. "Good night, Evelyn!" Chapter 19. The Spiked Soup. Evelyn Sinclair's heart fluttered with secret joy, unable to move past the lingering sensation of that kiss and the whispered, "Good night." The corners of her lips lifted uncontrollably. Alexander Kingsley reached over and turned off the floor lamp. "Sleep well?" "Yes, sir," Evelyn responded, her voice brimming with unconcealed delight. The night passed dreamlessly. The next morning, perhaps because she had slept so soundly, Evelyn woke at 5:30 a.m. to find Alexander still asleep. She watched him quietly, his brow furrowed slightly, as if troubled by a dream. Evelyn's eyes filled with tenderness as she gently smoothed the crease between his eyebrows. As his expression relaxed, she leaned in and kissed his forehead before slipping out of bed and into the bathroom. By the time he stirred awake, Evelyn was fully iridino. It was her turn to wait for him. Her unusual eagerness surprised Alexander. His gaze lingered on her lips, curling into an amused smile. Such initiative deserves praise. Though complimented, Evelyn pouted. You You're my husband, not my teacher. A deeper smile touched his eyes as he mused. If I taught you physical education, I doubt you'd even manage an 800-meter run without passing out. Evelyn fell silent. As Alexander headed for the bathroom, Evelyn followed, planting herself at the doorway. What did you mean by that? She sensed hidden implications in his words. I meant, he glanced at her, you're excessively fragile. Evelyn could only stare. Struck by the morning's blunt assessment, she stood frozen in the doorway until Alexander's dark eyes glimmered with teasing, planning to stand there indefinitely. Ha! She blinked, uncomprehending at his meaningful look. Realization dawned. Flushing, she retreated and hastily shut the bathroom door. Despite being married, she lacked the boldness to demand, "What haven't I seen?" shrinking when courage was needed most. On the balcony, she muttered aloud, "Evelyn, this timidity in pursuing your husband only invites other women to seize their chance, fail to win him over, and divorce follows. Then the title of Mrs. Kingsley, right to sleep beside him, belongs to another." She never noticed Alexander approach. "Evelyn." At his voice, she stiffened before turning with a nervous smile. "You're done." He simply nodded, having overheard her soliloquy but choosing silence. After days of training, Evelyn's stamina improved noticeably under Alexander's regimen. If he cared enough about her health to coach her physique even without, love wasn't resentment absent. As long as his distaste remained at bay, hope persisted. Yet 3 more days passed with their relationship. No breakthroughs. The afternoon, Alexander returned to work. Evelyn dressed carefully and headed to Kingsley Corporation. It was their parents' homecoming day. They drove together to the airport at a flower shop. Along the route, Evelyn bought a bouquet. "You parents are only staying 3 days, she said as the car moved. "They want us at the estate for 2 nights' thoughts. Your choice." Alexander kept his eyes ahead. Privately, he worried she might feel constrained. Parental visits meant doting inquiries and inevitable pressure for grandchildren. "Then let's accompany them," Evelyn declared. Allies had arrived after solitary battles. No chance would be wasted. At the arrival gate, Evelyn presented Mrs. Kingsley with flowers. Both parents were impeccably preserved, glowing like newlyweds. A permanent smile touched Mrs. Kingsley's lips at the sight of her daughter-in-law. They returned to the ancestral home where Mrs. Kingsley unzipped 2 suitcases brimming with limited edition bags, designer clothing, diamond necklaces, and 3 collectible figurines. "These are for my precious daughter-in-law." Mrs. Kingsley beamed. "The figurines are for Sophia Ashford. I recall her passion for them." A lump formed in Evelyn's throat. She remembered this from her previous life. Lydia had considered even Sophia, eyes misting. Evelyn choked back emotion. This woman treated her like her own blood. Yet in another lifetime, Evelyn had cost her beloved son. "Evelyn, why tears?" Mrs. Kingsley fretted at her sudden weeping. Evelyn buried her face in the woman's shoulder. "Thank you. Your kindness moved me to tears." Tenderly wiping her cheeks, Mrs. Kingsley said, "This is what mothers do." "Thank you," Evelyn murmured. Beyond gratitude, she felt undeserving of such devotion. "We've only a few days," said Mrs. Kingsley. "I arranged dinner for both families tomorrow." "Of course," Evelyn agreed. Dinner proceeded normally until Mrs. Kingsley's subtle pattern emerged. She served Alexander 3 bowls of stew and Evelyn 2. Evelyn recalled Mrs. Kingsley's earlier kitchen activity. Eyeing her bowl, Evelyn remembered a previous life this stew had been spiked. She caught Alexander's gaze, deduced it too. "Is the soup unpleasant?" Mrs. Kingsley asked brightly, steamrolling protests. Evelyn forced a smile. "Delicious, absolutely delicious. Then drink more." Evelyn gulped. Then Ally's offering couldn't be refused. When a 3rd bowl appeared, she pleaded, "Mother, I'm bursting." Yet persuasion proved futile. A hand slid over, claiming her bowl. She looked up perplexed. "Still hungry," Alexander said wearily. Unnoticed, he'd consumed broth all evening. His mother raised no objection. The potion worked, regardless of drinker. As Alexander sipped the 4th serving, Evelyn watched his silhouette, aching in silence sympathy. Evelyn Sinclair thought Alexander Kingsley was unaware of the additives in the soup, but he knew everything. She couldn't help worrying about his health. wondering how his body could handle so much soup. After dinner, she and Alexander returned to their room. As they stood to leave, Mr. and Mrs. Kingsley exchanged a glance, their eyes flickering with triumph. Their bedroom occupied the entire third floor. Evelyn began feeling uncomfortable, her body burning. She knew the additives in the soup were taking effect at first. It was mild warmth, barely noticeable. Alexander urged her to drink water to speed her metabolism. After 30 minutes, the heat intensified until it became unbearable. Seeing him visibly restraining himself, Evelyn reached to touch his forehead. He grabbed her wrist, voice hoarse, "Don't touch me!" Feeling rejected, Evelyn was hurt and aware he wasn't pushing her away, but preventing his own loss of control. Releasing her wrist, Alexander battled his urges and said gently, "Be good, drink more water," though less affected. Evelyn was still suffering. "I can't drink more. I feel awful." Rising, he ruffled her hair and led her to a tub filled with warm water. "Soak for a while. It'll help." Earlier hydration would ease her discomfort in the water. Evelyn eyed the filled tub, frowning, then looked back at Alexander. Gathering courage, she threw herself against him. "Alexander, why, you'd rather suffer than touch me." Her voice trembled with tears. "Do you hate me?" Their bodies pressed together ignited Alexander's desire. Closing his eyes briefly, he reopened them with clearer focus. Unwinding her arms from his waist, he touched her hair. "I don't hate you." "Then why?" she started. "I'm afraid you'll regret it," Alexander interrupted, stunned. Evelyn barely reacted before he carried her to the tub. Lukewarm water engulfed her. As she processed it, the bathroom door clicked shut. Alexander left and sighed deeply. Her body cooled in the water, but Alexander's struggle continued. He entered the guest bathroom, standing under icy water that failed to douse the fire, flushed, jaw clenched. He endured until cooled, then wrapped himself in a robe and returned still worried about her, comforted by the bath. Evelyn dozed off, slipping down the tub until Alexander's knocks and calls went unanswered. Entering, he dashed to her, wrapping her in a towel and pulling her out moments before her head submerged. He nipped her lip, chastising, always causing trouble, laying her on the bed. He endured agony while drying her, changing her into pajamas and blow-drying her hair. His long-forgotten cravings reignited at her proximity. While she slept soundly, once settled, Alexander retreated to the bathroom until dawn. Standing over her as she slept, he murmured softly, "Ungrateful little thing." Sliding into bed, he embraced her as she nestled near his warmth. At dawn, Evelyn almost wept seeing him beside her. How had she wasted such a perfect opportunity? Her mother-in-law had delivered him to her lips, yet she'd slept through the chance. Alexander woke and asked drowsily, "What's wrong?" Staring at the ceiling, Evelyn complained, "Just regretting not seizing a feast right before me." He caught her meaning, a faint smile touching his eyes. "Eat more meat tonight." Her hopes rose that he'd finally initiated their intimacy, only to learn that night what he truly intended. That evening, both families dined at Mrs. Kingsley's chosen restaurant. Throughout the meal, Alexander piled Evelyn's plate with meat, all her favorites. Realizing what he'd meant, she glared resentfully as their parents mistook it for flirtation and showered mutual compliments. Eleanor Whittaker rejoiced at her daughter's wonderful in-law. Fears of maternal conflict dissolved. Edward Sterling and Eleanor had assumed their daughter's arranged marriage forfeited her happiness, but soon saw that both Alexander and his parents adored her. Post-dinner goodbyes concluded, Evelyn and Alexander returned to the Kingsley mansion. Greeting his parents briefly, they headed upstairs, with time to spare. Evelyn showered and scrolled through her phone while Alexander worked in his study. An hour later, he'd just returned when a knock sounded. He opened the door to Maid Wang, holding a bowl of glistening brown herbal soup. Seeing its contents, Alexander stiffened. "Mrs. Kingsley sent tonic for you," Maid Wang said, coolly accepting it. He started shutting the door until she added, "She insists on watching you drink it." Alexander remained motionless. Evelyn approached. She recognized the potency surpassed last night's potion and knew Alexander's reluctance to touch her, rendering it pointless again. Clutching her stomach, she winced. "Husband, give me brown sugar water," as women understood. Maid Wang excused herself, later delivering the remedy. She accepted Evelyn's gratitude before the door closed on the untouched tonic